Good evening. Welcome to the October 17th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you're here with us tonight. If you're here in Chambers, welcome to Village Hall. If you're watching on TV, we're glad you're there as well. As is our custom, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose, Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Tully, Commissioner Davenport.
Here.
Welcome, everybody. Commissioners Jose and Tully are out of the office right now, so to speak, on business. Commissioner Jose may join us yet tonight. Item 3 on our agenda is a series of proclamations we have this evening. The first is Arts DuPage Month. Whereas the arts are the embodiment of all things beautiful, emotional, and entertaining in the world, an ever-present and enduring, yet growing and evolving record and reflection of the human experience defining personal, local, and national achievements and challenges. And whereas the arts have often shed light, focus, and awareness on the most vulnerable of society or those issues which bind us in the moment. Whereas the arts we explore what it means to be human, illuminate our inner lives, enrich our emotional world, and teach compassion. Whereas art has the power to facilitate social interactions and raise mutual understanding of those experiences that make us unique and bring people together and ideas. Whereas art has time and again proven a comfort in crisis, an outlay in adversity, and a bridge to peace. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as Arts DuPage Month by Arts DuPage and the arts and cultural organizations in all the communities within DuPage County. And whereas the arts enhance every aspect of life in Downers Grove, playing a unique and intrinsically valuable role in the lives of our residents. Now therefore I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as Arts DuPage Month and call upon all citizens to seek, engage, celebrate, and promote the arts in the Village of Downers Grove. Dated the 7th day of October 2023, Downers Grove, Illinois. And we have a member of Arts DuPage here to give us a few words this evening.
Just a little bit this way, please. Thank you.
So I am Debbie Venezia, Director of Arts DuPage of DuPage Foundation. And thank you, Mayor Barnett, and members of the Downers Grove Council for proclaiming October as Arts DuPage Month. I'd also like to thank the Downers Grove Downtown Management for embracing the arts. Classic Cinemas, Downers Grove Historical Society, Grove Players, Two-Way Street Coffee House, and Westtown Chorus all add to your vibrancy and bring attention to the region. This support sends a positive message to DuPage County's residents and visitors that allows them to recognize the vital role the creative sector plays in the area. To give you an example of the impact of the arts in DuPage County, here's some notes from the Frida Kahlo exhibit at College of DuPage 2 years ago. In its 3-month run, the Frida exhibit brought over 100,000 people from all 50 states and 43 countries to Glen Ellen, proving DuPage County is a destination for the arts. In those 3 short months, it infused over $10 million into the local economy. This exhibit gave us insight into another culture, showed us a different era and time, and helped us to heal during the pandemic. This year, the Andy Warhol exhibit recreated the cycle by again drawing visitors from 50 states and 28 countries. Andy Warhol also did something else to DuPage County as a whole. It united us. 29 municipalities created or celebrated Warhol through their own experiences, including public art pop-up murals, ribbon cuttings, concerts, lectures, movies, and other activities. In some cases, city councils, downtown alliances, libraries, and park districts worked together for the first time ever and created events that were enjoyed by all. Let's hope our Arts DuPage Month celebration inspires our residents. By participating in the arts, they will not only contribute to their own well-being, but will also increase economic activity and positively impact the quality of life in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another proclamation this evening. This has to do with Community Planning Month. Whereas change is constant and affects all communities, whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and whereas achieving the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, engage, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation, and whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States and its territories. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional, community, and regional planners of the Village of Downers Grove and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as Community Planning Month in the Village of Downers Grove in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month, dated the 17th day of October 2023, Downers Grove, Illinois. Stan, you want to come up here for a minute? Do we have anyone here from Midwestern University? Awesome. I'm used to seeing the white coats. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're here tonight. We have one more proclamation which has to do with American Pharmacist Month. Whereas pharmacy is one of the oldest of the health professions concerned with the health and well-being of all people. And whereas the first celebration of National Pharmaceutical Week was held from October 11th through 17th, 1925, when radio stations across the country broadcast special programs which emphasized the professional side of pharmacy. And whereas in 2004, American Pharmacist Month was launched to allow more time to promote the expanding role of the pharmacist. Whereas there are over 327,000 pharmacists licensed in the United States, providing services to assure the rational and safe use of all medications. Whereas pharmacists are specifically educated with a focus and level of expertise on medication therapy that exceeds that of other healthcare providers, and are ideally suited to work collaboratively with other healthcare team members and patients to improve medication use and outcomes by providing services through medication therapy management. Whereas, as our healthcare system and the demands placed on it changed, pharmacists have stepped up and continued to provide direct patient care, playing a crucial role in informing, supporting, and comforting patients. Whereas the American Pharmacists Association, the Illinois Pharmacists Association have declared October as American Pharmacist Month. Whereas Downers Grove's own Midwestern University College of Pharmacy graduates approximately 100 qualified pharmacists yearly who go on to enter the healthcare system and provide patient care. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as American Pharmacist Month in the Village of Downers Grove, and urge all our citizens to acknowledge the valuable services of pharmacists to provide safe, affordable, and beneficial pharmaceutical care services, and provide products to all citizens, taking a moment to simply thank your pharmacist. Dated the 17th day of October 2023, Downers Grove, Illinois. If you guys like to come on up.
Thank you.
Mayor Barnett, Commissioners, and residents of Downers Grove, on behalf of the American Pharmacist Association Academy of Student Pharmacists at the Midwestern University College of Pharmacy in Downers Grove, I thank you for proclaiming October as American Pharmacist Month. The purpose of this proclamation is to recognize the service of pharmacists in the community. Pharmacists are the most accessible healthcare professionals, and they can provide health screenings, immunizations, and medication therapy management, among many other services. As medication experts, pharmacists reduce the number of people who end up in the hospital, provide the best therapy recommendations for those who are hospitalized, decrease the number of medication-related errors, and improve patient outcomes. We have seen the role of pharmacists greatly expand since the onset of COVID-19. Pharmacists are now allowed to administer vaccines in all 50 states and have played a vital role for treating infected patients. Some states, including Illinois, are expanding prescribing rights that allows pharmacists to provide management for diabetes, high cholesterol, blood pressure, heart failure, and many more disease states. Additionally, our chapter has consistently provided free clinics that allow patients to get their blood pressure and blood glucose screened by student pharmacists, while also receiving counseling on their medications. We recently have added a branch to our clinics called the Morning Star Mission in Joliet, where we are paired with the American Association of Psychiatric Pharmacists. In addition to medical screening, we provide mental health resources for housing insecure patients. Lastly, we give our students opportunities to become leaders in healthcare. For example, our naloxone administration training program is continuing to grow. Students are training other graduate schools on how to administer this life-saving opioid reversal drug, while educating on the severity of addiction. Our volunteers also attend an annual event at the Downers Grove Fire Department and counsel on medication safety and implement drug take-back events. At the end of the day, it is important to recognize the care that we are capable of providing to our patients and community. My name is Courtney McKinnon, and I am the former president of APHA, and the E-Board and I thank you for recognizing the vital role pharmacists have in our community, and we thank you for having us here tonight.
All right, moving on with our meeting. There's a motion for previous council minutes.
Mayor, I move to adopt the Village Council meeting minutes from October 3rd, 2023 as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the council on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Item 5 on our agenda is public comments portion of our meeting. And as we try and do a little bit of meeting management, I've got a question for everybody. You can raise your hand twice if you want, but if you're here to talk about Main Street tonight, please raise your hand. Okay, if you're here to talk about video gaming, raise your hand. If you're here to talk about Fairview, raise your hand. Okay. We will get into those in a little bit. We may take a break here or there to try and keep the meeting moving and allow council to participate as well. But whether it's tonight or again at a future date, everybody will get their say. Before we get into public comments, as a reminder, both now and for a little later in the meeting, I do have a few words. Some of you have heard these before. For others, it may be the first time, but it's a little bit of decorum about how we try and manage our public comments portion. At several points during the meeting, there will be opportunities for public comments. The public comments portion of our agenda are important, valued parts of each council meeting. We have provisions for public comment at each active and first reading agenda item, and there's an additional opportunity for non-agenda items under the public comments section of the agenda. While council sessions are not open debates, those that follow our meeting will recognize this council allows extended commentary and input from the public and seldom, if ever, cuts anyone off. Beyond tonight's meeting, there are a variety of additional opportunities to engage council members, including our e-remark system, the CRC system, coffee with the council, direct email, and by phone. Every one of your council members spends time in person off this dais, making themselves available to residents and businesses across the community. Those one-on-one conversations are often the most valuable. Your council is listening. You may see us taking notes up here, but what we're doing is considering what's been said. Please know that often some time is needed to reflect on the comments presented to us in a meeting. If you plan to speak, please keep the following in mind as you come to the podium. Please state your name for the record. Address your comments to me as the chair of the meeting. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Avoid repeating what others have already said. Please keep your comments to 1 visit to the podium per subject. And remember that comments are most effective when they focus on subjects within the scope of Village of Downers Grove governance. We thank you for your participation here tonight and your cooperation as we manage our meeting. So with that, we will move to the public comments portion of the meeting. This is the portion of the meeting where we take public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here to let us know about something that's not on the agenda tonight, come on down to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Village staff. My name is Addie Potter, and I am a senior at Downers Grove North. I am also a member of the Grove Express Junior Board of Directors, along with the rest of the students next to me.
I'm Ryan Gustis, a junior at Downers Grove North.
I'm Lily Bowerman, a junior at Downers Grove North.
I'm Lola Blogwell, a senior at Downers Grove North.
I'm Sarah Ryan, a senior at Downers Grove South.
And we are all here tonight to talk to you about the Grove Express race, our role in the race, our future plans, and more.
The Grove Express is a non-for-profit race that raises money to donate directly back into the community of Downers Grove. This means we donate to schools, local organizations, and more. The race takes place every Thanksgiving morning each year and has been bringing the community together for over 20 years. At this point, you might be wondering what we do. The Junior Board of Directors was a new addition to the Grove Express Foundation last year as a way to connect with the youth of Downers Grove. We also give opportunities to high school students to learn about how an organization like this is run to better prepare them for experiences post-high school.
Within the Grove Express Foundation, each board member is on a different committee. Similarly, each junior board member is assigned a committee or two to work on throughout the season. We all choose a committee that aligns with our interests so that we can pour our passions into the event. Each committee has its own separate jobs and responsibilities.
The junior board is also responsible for collaborating with one another to accomplish some of our own personal goals and activities. For example, last year, myself, Addie, and another DGN junior board member filmed a short skit with our principal that played at the DGN weekly video announcements. The video was very successful and resulted in many more registered high schoolers. We also got the Grove Express Foundation sponsored by NHS, National Honor Society, so students could officially obtain their service hours at our events. Not to mention, we also help coordinate and direct volunteers at those events. At meetings, we come ready to brainstorm with our ideas and look forward to setting up and executing at race day. We are all eager to help out whenever asked.
This year, we have many new plans that the Junior Board of Directors will be collaborating on. First, we plan on making instructional videos to inform our volunteers on their duties. Additionally, we will be interviewing our board members and race participant families alike on why they choose to participate in the Grove Express Foundation. New this year, we are also beginning a competition between North and South high school students. The school that demonstrates that their student body has participated the most in Grove Express Foundation related volunteer activities, as well as in our race registrants, will receive a token of our appreciation that the school will hold on to throughout the school year until the next Thanksgiving Day race.
Our website, groveexpress.com, contains all details about registering for the race, which, by the way, you can do right now. The current price is $35 and will increase as we get closer to the race. The next price increase is October 31st. The race begins at 8:30 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning on Main Street. Also, make sure to look out for our volunteer opportunities to help with the race. Thank you all so much for listening. We are all very excited about the upcoming race and all things that come with it. Stay tuned, and we hope to see you on race day.
Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to see everybody here to talk about bills payable tonight in the consent agenda. One quick observation regarding the couple of empty council seats tonight and your workload. In looking at your long-range plan of projects to tackle, which is really only the 2 years that you guys are going to be up here together as council, this council has more on its plate than any other council I can remember. These are projects well above and beyond your normal day-to-day stuff that you guys do to run this village. I love moving things forward, but I urge you to press the brakes a little and be careful to not make decisions on very important, long-lasting, far-reaching items without giving these items their due process and attention. Two council members had pressing work conflicts and couldn't be here tonight. One may be here late, as the mayor mentioned. This is totally reasonable, as we all have a lot going on, but tonight you'll be voting on bringing Main Street down to 1 lane each way and are having a first reading on the video gambling ordinance, 2 people shy. And you're also starting the very important conversation about zoning ordinances in the Fairview area and future vision of that area without 2 of the most knowledgeable commissioners on this topic. Something to consider, and maybe take a look at your list and maybe the timeline that you've laid out. Thank you.
I want to talk about the outdoor dining situation and having to do with the barricades in the streets and tables in the streets. Saturday after the market, I drove around from the library down Curtis over to the post office. There was a Cisco's food service truck on Curtis at the corner with its nose pressed and out into the street because it had to get as close as it could to the barricade in order to unload the truck. And the space that was available to pass through, given the cars on the south side, literally inches on each side, literally almost inability to clear. I couldn't back up because the traffic behind me was passed through the intersection. If I'd scratched my car, by gosh, I would have sent you the bill to get it repainted. I was so angry and frustrated and scared, frankly, that I was not going to be able to make it through that narrow space. This happens when UPS drivers stop during the day and the afternoon, and traffic needs to be able to flow smoothly through town. These barricades need to go. It's not safe to have people dining in the middle of the street, and it's not healthy either, given the exhaust, and it's a very bad plan. And I'm going to urge you to get rid of those even earlier than you might otherwise, because this is not safe, it's not fair to the drivers who try to move around in town. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Others on subjects not on tonight's agenda? Okay, we will continue then. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously as well. Item 7 is our active agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we plan to take up subjects. We plan on acting on these subjects. These are subjects we have talked about at least once prior, sometimes multiple times prior. Is there a motion concerning rezoning?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance rezoning certain property located at 1634 63rd Street as presented.
Second.
Are there any audience comments or questions on this zoning amendment? Any council comments or questions? Rosa, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That passes 5-0. Is there a motion concerning rezoning in Glendenning Road?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance rezoning certain property located at 3854 Glendenning Road as presented.
Second.
Any audience comments or questions on this item? Council comments or questions? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That also passes 5-0. Is there a motion concerning Main Street?
Mayor, I move to direct staff to submit the pre-final plans to the Illinois Department of Transportation, IDOT, to continue with the federal project approval process for the construction of the traffic safety improvements on Main Street near Downers Grove North High School.
Second.
Thank you both. Are there any audience comments or questions about this item?
I didn't raise my hand, sorry about that. I'm not going to beat it to death. I know I don't have the vote to have you guys take me up on my suggestions. I was just reading that there was a person riding their bike, a party to a hit and run today on Ogden and Sherman. So I would take a quick look at the plan to make sure that, I think Leslie, you were bringing up putting some ridges or reflectors or something to let drivers know that there is actually going to be a 5-foot bike path dedicated for bikers on each side, northbound and southbound. And also, I know you guys have your modeling people and you don't think it's going to be an issue with sending traffic west at that choke point on Main Street and Prairie. Just keep an eye on that and just do me a favor. And if you see, the hundreds of cars that I think are going to be deflected at that choke point, just, consider the other neighbors that live in that area. And we don't want to be the cut-through street that we've always been. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Any council comments or questions? Okay, Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That also passes 5-0. That ends our active agenda tonight. That takes us to item 8 on our agenda, the first reading. This is the portion of the meeting where we discuss items we do not plan on taking formal action on this evening. These are, again, are items that we may have talked about before, we may talk about again, but in either way, we are not planning on taking action tonight. So with that, I will pass it over to Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. There are 2 items on tonight's first reading agenda. The first is an ordinance considering the establishment of video gaming regulations. Council may recall that staff gave a presentation on this on October 3rd, which was our last meeting. We have no further presentation. We have no changes to the draft ordinance or the staff report. We did provide responses to village council member questions in the agenda materials posted online. If you're interested in seeing those, they are posted right after the staff report. We're here to answer any questions that the council may have, Mayor.
Thank you, Dave. Any audience comments or questions on this item? Got to be somebody. Everybody raise their hands.
Mayor, Council. I'm here to speak about the video game resolution. So I wanted to bring up the Illinois Department of Health. They estimate that 3.8% of Illinois...
Could you give us your name?
Oh, I'm so sorry. My name is Timothy Colston. First time speaking up here.
No problem.
So 3.8% of Illinoisans, adults, have a gambling problem, and 7.7 additional are also susceptible to gambling, per the Illinois Department of Public Health. So my question, one of a few, and you don't have to answer, this is more rhetorical, but is the village prepared to handle up to 10% of the population having a gambling addiction if we do pass this? A study by ProPublica in 2019 actually found that the average income level decreases as the average number of machines increases. And they found a significant negative correlation between the number of video gaming machines in a community with the average household income. I did notice that there was a response online to one of the questions regarding property values. It actually drew comparisons between 2012 and 2021. Those happen to be the lowest point of property values post-Great Recession to the highest, most recent. So it makes the numbers look very good. I would say that we would have to take those measures with a grain of salt. And also the mention of 5% of the revenue coming to the local governments. That's actually one of the lowest in the country. Many other states throughout the country that have legalized video gaming have rates of 50 to 75% taxes. Illinois just does 34%. So this is something also to consider, that are we really getting the best deal out of this? And also, because of the decrease in taxes compared to other states, Illinois actually doesn't cover as much gambling addiction services as other states do. And therefore, it falls on the local municipalities to share that burden. So that's something to consider as well. I just want to quote a few items from another ProPublica article regarding gambling in Illinois, regarding public education. The legalization of video gambling has triggered another shift in the state's revenues, one that led to a drop in education funding. While the bulk of video gambling revenue goes to fund Illinois jobs now, most of the state's casino revenue flows into the Education Assistance Fund, which provides grants to public elementary and secondary schools, colleges, and universities for building projects and other expenses. But when video gambling became legal, gamblers no longer had to travel to the state's 10 casinos to place a bet. Between 2013 and 2017, state revenue from casinos in Illinois declined 15%, from $462 million to $393 million, as income from video gambling machines grew nearly 900%, from $30 million to $300 million, state records show. The cannibalization of casino revenue contributed to a 22% decline in the amount of money going to the Education Assistance Fund between 2013 and 2017, leaving fewer dollars for the state's struggling schools. In fact, video gambling has caused the overall percentage of gambling industry profits going to the state to fall. That's because the state levies a progressive tax on casinos and can reach as high as 50%. The more the casinos make, the higher their tax rate. Video gambling is taxed at a flat rate of 30% at the time of the article, regardless of how much the industry makes. As more gamblers turned to video slots and poker, the state's cut of gambling profits dropped. In 2007, when casino revenue peaked at $1.9 billion, the industry paid about $819 million in taxes, a rate of 42%. By 2018, revenue from casinos and video gambling brought in $2.8 billion, up 42%, but the state's share of the money was $891 million, up just 9%. In conclusion, are we prepared as a community to address increased gambling addiction, up to 10% in our community, decreased funding for our education system, and property value growth that lags behind our neighboring communities? The annual projected revenue would only be $530,000 and would open our village to additional social burdens for little additional gain. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey guys, before we go any further, we're going to take notes on everybody's comments, and believe me, we understand everybody's passion. But if we have everybody in this room talk, and then we have applause after everyone, one side or the other, all it's going to do is make it so we run out of time tonight. So let's hold the applause down. I'm not going to tell everybody they can't say anything and they can't clap, but seriously, we're trying to run a meeting, and we are absolutely taking all this stuff to heart, and we're taking it in seriously. The applause is not doing anything for us. Please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dan Wimsat. I live on Meadow Avenue, the 4900 block. When my brother Mark got married 20 years ago, I did the best man speech unprepared, and I swore I would never do public speaking again without written ideas. And here I stand in front of you, pushed by my sense of what's the right thing to do. I have twin 12-year-old boys who have started at Herrick and spend a lot of time in downtown Downers Grove, at the library, at Cocamero, at Pete's Coffee, at Starbucks. I was actually got sushi with them about 6 months ago, and Chris offered me a chair to sit outside. You probably don't remember that, to sit outside because there weren't enough chairs to sit in. I'm an addiction counselor. I've been a therapist for about 25 years, and I can tell you, when drunk people lose their money, they get angry. And this proposition actually seems to be pretty clear that people are going to be gambling at establishments where they will be drinking, because you have to have a liquor license to get this establishment. This isn't happening at home. This isn't happening in Las Vegas. You're proposing this happens on the main street where my children will be walking. And I really implore you to consider the externalities associated with this. because there are many. I don't have documentation about data. I just know as a therapist for many years that when people get drunk and people lose their money, they get angry, and they're going to be walking out into the streets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for giving me this time for this public comment. My name is Eva Rodriguez, and I am a sophomore at Downers Grove High School, North. I believe that adding video gaming into businesses in Downers Grove would be harmful in the community. Tree-lined streets, well-kept parks, and local businesses are some things that I love about Downers Grove. I have learned to appreciate our village after visiting other towns that did not have easily accessible amenities within their communities, such as libraries, parks, restaurants, and downtown areas. I have personally experienced the harms that come with adding video gaming in businesses. A gas station that I visited on a recent road trip contained video gaming slots, and immediately I could notice a difference in the surrounding that quickly made me uncomfortable. As I approached the building, there was an instant smell of smoke and trash thrown inside and out. This is a common scenario that I have observed while going into establishments containing video gaming. Well, yes, a lot of gas stations tend to not be the cleanest. There was an obvious difference in the environment. Another time I've been exposed to gaming was on a recent family cruise. I could notice the different types of behaviors in and around the casino versus the rest of the ship. From the behavior of leaving drinks and trash around the entrance and elevators that were located outside the casino. Additionally, the amount of smoke from the casino was extremely unpleasant and unbearable. This proves that adding video gaming into Downers Grove would be harmful and create an uncomfortable environment for me and others in and out of the community. Downers Grove is a wonderful town, and I would like to keep it that way. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your time to listen to the community with reference to video gaming. My name is Sarah Van Dyke, and I have been a citizen of Downers Grove for 25 years. I commend the commissions of past, because when I moved to Downers Grove, I actually never intended to stay because of how Downers Grove looked, especially on the Ogden community. And the Ogden Strip was just the closest to where I live. It cleaned up tremendously. Our parks were improved, and I ended up staying here in my house to raise my family. I, however, am not for video gaming. I believe video gambling brings down the look of the town. I believe that the existence of gaming will discourage young families from moving to this town, wanting to buy homes and wanting to raise their families here. Downers Grove is a family community and focused on children, and that proof comes in our recent referendums where we voted to increase our taxes in order to have better schools for both the high school and the elementary districts. This referendum for bringing in gambling would be in direct contrast to people voting to improve our schools, to improve our property values, etc. I strongly believe that I would not have moved here had I seen the video gaming back 25 years ago when I came in. I implore that you, if you would, to at least let the citizens determine what happens with video gaming in this town and send it to a referendum like we did our schools, and let us decide how our town should look and what our brand should be and what our voices are heard within the government here. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
My name is Rich Matthews, 13-year resident. Our beliefs are not at point here. It's the facts that are at point. Another fact that's in point is how much in real estate taxes do I have to pay to live here? When there are other video gaming and other revenue streams that can be used to minimize that. We talk about feelings. We all have feelings, absolutely. But the facts are what is in order here. If those of you are going to vote against this, maybe you can even raise your hand right now. Can you do that? You don't want to do this?
Rich, we're going to vote
No?
probably next week.
Okay, that's great.
And so what?
So my hope is, Mr. Mayor, that if you are going to vote against this because of religious beliefs, because you don't think it's right, you don't feel it's right, you think there's something better that we could be doing, I have a suggestion. Let's eliminate what really is a problem in the United States. Let's get rid of all the liquor laws. If you really want to avoid problems in the schools, problems in the workforce, problems with your families, let's talk about what is really at stake here instead of something that is on the very corner edge of what we're talking about here. My feeling is, here's my feeling, that if we're going to shut this down and say, nope, we're not going to do it, then we should also tackle the bigger issues that we are not paying any attention to whatsoever. And if you don't do that, then my question is, where is your logic? Where is your reasoning coming from? Is it your heart? Is it your head? Is it fact? What is it? By the way, I'm not your video gaming customer. If I go into a local bar and there's 4 video gaming things that are there, I'm not going to be the one sitting at the chair. I'm not. It's not my thing. It's not what I'm into. But if someone else wants to do it and they're not bothering me, and I don't hear the ding, 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 the bing, bing, bing going on, they're doing their thing, what do I care? What do I care? That's their business. That's what they want to do. You had the owner of Ballydoyle come in here and tell you that if it weren't for video gaming, they would have not been able to keep their doors open during the pandemic. There is a reason for it. Again, I am not saying that I am so for it that I can't see straight. That's not what this is about at all. What I am in for it, and I'm being completely prejudicial for myself, is how much in taxes do I have to pay when there are other revenue streams that are out there that can at least mitigate the amount of taxes I pay. The woman came up here a minute ago. The increase in taxes did this, they did that. When does the increases stop? I ask you to think about this. I ask you to think about the facts. If you look at video gaming versus alcohol and substance abuse, there is no comparison whatsoever by an order of magnitude. So what are we really talking about here? Feelings or facts? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Nick Luchark, Prince Street, Downers Grove. I'll be brief. If I wanted to gamble today in Downers Grove, I could walk into the Moose, support a local establishment, play video games. I could pull out my phone and play the Powerball. I could pull out FanDuel or DraftKings on my phone and bet against the Bears to make a few quick bucks. But what I could also do is take my family to a restaurant and not have to deal with the gambling machines everywhere because of how things are today. There's plenty of options to gamble in all the towns around, on your phone, etc. The revenue is very minimal according to your own report. Let's just keep it the way it is, and if it's really a freedom of choice issue, let's put it to vote as others have suggested. Thank you.
Others?
I'm Jonathan Bender. I've been in other cities and other states that have had video gaming come into them. The areas that they do usually it tends to downgrade the area. You heard a bunch of people say both sides, but I really think Downers Grove is special. There's a reason I'm here. There's a reason a lot of people are here, because they want to keep it that way. And there's a fear factor of it, but I've seen it happen a number of times on the other side. So base thing, just if we have to go forward, go for a vote so that we can decide our own, what our town is going to be like. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tim McCahill. I live on Middow Avenue in Downers Grove. I want to start by saying thank you to all the commissioners. I called each and every one of you a bunch over the last few weeks. Some of you spent an hour on the phone with me. Some of you spent longer. So really do appreciate the care and honestly the time and dedication you put to Downers Grove. Now, on the flip side, I can't agree with you on this at all for those who do support it. You know, one thing that stood out with me was from a commissioner was stating that Illinois made it legal. Illinois said you should have a choice. Well, you guys were elected by Downers Grove residents. As you know, Downers Grove residents from Naperville have voted against unanimously. Other towns have supported it. I ask you genuinely, listen to your residents. Put it to a vote. The least that can happen is if it passes, it passes. This is too big of a decision to not have your community, the people in this room, have a voice in whether or not this gets passed. This will change this town forever. And while I know we're saying it's not downtown today, I promise you in 5 years, Ballydoyle will sue. Another round will sue. They're going to all want it downtown. And I wouldn't blame them. If you permit it somewhere, why can't it be down there? Permit it nowhere. Let the residents vote. Please send this to referendum. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Tracy Van Houten, Northcott Avenue. I'm here, like many other people here tonight, to talk to you about why no video gambling should be allowed in our village. It's a highly addictive form of gaming and can have devastating consequences to individuals, families, home values, and communities. I moved to this area in 1996 and have seen this village undergo an amazing transformation. Gone are the seedy liquor store and empty, rundown storefronts that used to once populate our downtown and Ogden Avenue. It's been replaced by thriving restaurants, shops, and entertainment for families, which is a huge, strong point of this community. Now, this was due to the strong leadership by our mayors and village councils of past. Let's not take a step back here when our restaurants are thriving and families and children have Downers Grove at the top of their list for raising their families. When I first heard about this, I was sort of curious, so I looked up the towns that had allowed this versus the ones that don't allow it to determine, get an idea of the possible impact on real estate values. Now, by my calculations, I went through the towns, and the towns that don't allow have an average median square foot value of $271 per square foot. Towns that allow it, $90 less at $181 per square foot. As far as median sale price, just to do another measure, towns that don't allow, $691,000 versus towns that allow $281,000. That's a $410,000 average or median sale price difference in these towns. I urge you, sincerely urge you, to send this to referendum and let the people vote. We are talking about the village of Downers Grove and surrounding towns like Arlington Heights, Clarendon Hills, Glen Ellen, Hinsdale, LaGrange, Naperville, and Oak Brook. These are towns that do not allow video gambling. Surrounding towns that do, Darien, Lamont, Lombard, Villa Park, Westmont, and Woodridge. I ask you to listen to the constituents. Let us vote and decide which side of the track we want to be on. In addition to the concerns tonight, I know some people argue that gambling is a form of entertainment and should be allowed for those that want to enjoy it. However, the risks of video gambling far outweigh its potential benefits as have been outlined by others. I urge you to send this to referendum and let the people vote. I urge you to think about the families that live here, that want to come here. I ask you to think about our community and vote against video gambling and send it to referendum. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caroline Shields. I live on Forest Avenue. I've been a resident for the past 11 years. I have 3 kids, and my husband and I love walking into town with our family and appreciate all that Downers Grove has to offer. I'm here to voice my opinion against video gambling. This is an extremely short-sighted move that lacks the interest of our community. I watched the October 3rd committee council meeting, and the information that stood out to me is the following. This decision is not about revenue for our community. This would only benefit the interests of restaurants and terminal operators. The tax benefit of roughly $250,000 does not provide a large enough income amount to positively impact our community. Not to mention, there are hidden costs, such as more use of our village staff and law enforcement. This takes away funding from our schools by providing gambling opportunities outside of casinos. The research has shown that towns that allow gambling are economically slowing. To quote Chris from the meeting, he said, "It's a race to the bottom." And that is truly what I believe, and I know a lot of people here believe that as well. The legacy of Downers Grove is in your hands, and we want to make this decision. We don't believe that this should be in our town, and we are asking that you send this to a referendum. Thank you.
Janet Wingham, longtime Downers Grove resident. I agree with most of with the speakers who have asked you to reject video gaming, except on one point. I don't think we need a referendum. Just vote no. The topic was tabled years ago because there was a huge outpouring against it, and so laid to the side. Here it is again. The restaurants, it will only benefit the restaurants who are licensed, and 8 restaurants. That's just the beginning. It's not going to stop there. It will come back downtown, and it will change the character of the village. One argument that was made was we have other activities that are unsavory, such as, to me anyway, smoking parlors and whatnot. Because we have some uses that are permitted that are not maybe the best in the world, there's no reason to add another. We have to support our restaurants because they had COVID difficulties. Well, lots of businesses had to survive COVID and were not given so many benefits as our restaurants got. And if this is for the outdoor dining as well, I would suspect that most of them had loans from the PPP loans that were forgiven. If they're not recovering, then they've got different problems and other problems. There's been a suggestion that, and I'm sorry Commissioner Tully isn't here because he likes to talk about compromise. You don't need to compromise on this. Compromise is not always the answer to a situation. Once you start, it will not stop. It will come back. And you have a duty and an obligation to represent all of the village residents. I understand, and you will have this information, can correct me if I'm wrong, that the online comments and other comments here tonight have been overwhelmingly against this activity. And it is your responsibility as commissioners to represent everybody in the village, or the majority of the village, as best you can. And this is a topic that's ripe for that kind of situation. So I'm going to agree with most of everybody here that is spoken against, except there's no need for a referendum. Just vote no.
My name is Charlie Eckert. I'm a longtime resident of Downers Grove. I just want to go on record like everybody else against the video gambling. I just see how it makes us a better community, better citizens. I would ask you, if you had children, would you encourage them when they're adults to gamble? You certainly wouldn't do it to tell them to do it consistently, because we know for sure they would lose. It's comically called the bad math tax. And I don't see how you want to vote for something that in your community, that your citizens, you will know they will lose money. So again, I just want to go on record against this. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Morrissey. I'm a Downers Grove resident. Just want to thank all of you for your service to our community and what you're doing, so thank you. Raising 4 boys here in Downers Grove, I'll keep this short. All the arguments that I would have have been already reiterated. I want to say that I was actually originally for this because I was for the revenue coming into Downers Grove, anything to lower our taxes. But I started doing some research and I actually signed one of the petitions one of the nights in one of the establishments. But I started doing research on it, and I think all this stuff's been stated already, and I just kindly ask that we could get this to a referendum. I agree we shouldn't do this. I think it should be a no. I just appreciate if you can get it to a referendum. Thank you.
My name is Jayshree Sheth, and I'm a resident of Downers Grove. I don't have anything prepared, and I'm blown away by some of these arguments here with all their facts and figures. And but what I just want to say is, it's just kind of a reflection of what is gambling itself. Is it ever really a benefit? When we look at all kinds of gambling that's out there, not just video gambling, but I mean anything from the stock market to going to Vegas and blowing all your money and sports bets and what it does to people, of, I'm sorry if I'm going to be rambling a little bit, what it does to people is it breaks up their families. Sometimes people die because of it. We don't have all the facts and figures of those things because it's a shame. It's something that people won't want to admit to. In my own family, I have, people's marriages broke up, or if they didn't break up, they had great financial setbacks. My own mother forces me to take her to Harris Casino once a week. Now that's in Joliet. I'll take her to the casino. It's somewhere I'd never go, except that she's 80 years old and that's where she wants to go and that's what she wants to do. And she doesn't spend terribly much money, but she does get a little crazy. Now I'm not saying don't bring video gambling here because of my mother, but just in general, what is the benefit to the community of adding another addiction, another possible addiction? We already have things that are out there and they're bad, alcohol, smoking, marijuana might be half of a benefit because of the fact that there are medical uses for it. But gambling, the video gambling, that can be done in other ways if people really, really want to do it. And like I said, I'll go to Harris Casino, I'll take my mom 20 miles, I'll take my mom to Vegas, I'll do whatever, but it doesn't necessarily belong in our community. It's something that, at least it's just from my opinion, is just something that maybe would be better left to communities that are made around it. But also there's also the downfalls, as other people were saying. I go to Harrah's once a week in Joliet, and it's just not a good place to go. It's not a good place to drive into. It's not a good place to drive out of. It's ugly. It's just not a good thing. It's just not a good thing, I feel, for me, and I think a lot of other people agree with that as well. Thank you.
Evening. My name is Scott Richards. I live at 1130 Warren Avenue here in Downers. Just to let's cut it to the quick and just put it in the hands of the residents here in town. It's a democratic country, democratic system. Let the majority rule. I'm not opposed. I mean, people have a right, thank God in this country, all have a right to choose as we do. But the majority rule should be, this is a big issue, and no offense to the board, but I don't think it should be in the decision in your hands of 5, 6, 7 people. This affects everybody in town, and I think the issue is big enough that we all should have a vote on it. And what I'm hearing tonight, which I certainly agree with, no, I'm opposed to it. You have a right if you want to participate in this, but we're enough surrounding communities around here, not far away, then go to one that supports this, who has already passed it. I don't think we should have to. I don't think there's enough financially, in the interest for our town, our community, to go down that road. So referendum is what I think. Instead of just a few people making this decision, let the population here in town, all of us, make the decision. Thank you.
Marshall Schmidt, 4923 Sealy. I told myself I'd take a step back from this podium, but there are some issues that just bring me back. So I don't want to repeat what people said, but I want to make a few observations that maybe put a little different spin on it. The two things that I've observed in this process, and I've followed it from afar, is number one, that this is a cost-benefit analysis, and some have focused on the additional revenue that'll come in. But tonight, you've heard a whole host of other reasons why not to do this, which are on the other side of the ledger. And in order to make an informed decision, if the council is going to make the decision, you really need to have a full, robust discussion. And I know the council takes a lot of input from a lot of different sources, but this is an issue that is so complicated, involving so many factors, that it's not something that can be decided over the course of a month. It can't be decided at a planning meeting that we really want to look at this, we need to come to a decision on this. Let's have a very abbreviated decision-making process. This really is a decision that needs to be made with full input and full discussion. And that's really the beauty of the democratic process, right? It's not only that people have a right to choose and should have a right to choose. The reason why that process works is because when you leave it up to the people and you give them time to digest the information and have robust discussion over a period of months, which I understand the referendum would be in March, you get everything on the table. You get the word out to the entire community so that people in the entire community can make this decision, can take in the information that's necessary to reach the right decision. There's no perfect decision in all of this because you will deprive certain businesses of revenue. But given all of the things that have been said tonight, putting aside feelings, looking at facts, as one of the speakers talked about, it's not just the fact that you're going to make $200,000 or $500,000 more money. The impact is far broader than that. It's going to impact community services. It's going to increase health concerns. And really, if you look at what you have been presented by the staff, and it's no diss on the staff, there isn't a single word in that report that talks about what are the negative impacts that this is going to have on the village? Where are the facts and figures about how pervasive addiction is? Where are the facts and figures about the impact it's going to have on police spending here? As far as taxes go, you know, I'm very familiar with what good shape the finances of this village are in. I'm not hearing an outcry that we're so poor that we have to compromise the integrity of the community in order to make a couple $100,000. And those are things that the community needs to think about. So I do ask you, I would prefer that you just vote it down, because I think on balance, the balance is clear. But given the gravity of this, the complexity of this, and the importance of the process to reach a decision that the community can embrace, you need to give it time and you need to let the people decide. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Ann Riley, and I was born and raised in Downers Grove, and I've been back for like 19 years, so I absolutely love this town. You guys have done an amazing job making it way better than it was when I was growing up. And I just drive down Belmont and Maple, and I cringe at the blinky lights and the signs and all that stuff over there. And I just ask you to not take away everything that you've done to make this town so great. It's a great place to raise kids. Everyone wants to live here. So I agree, vote no, but if that's not going to work, send it to a referendum and let us decide. Thank you.
Anthony Schroeder, not to, I go by Tony, but I don't want to be confused with the other Schroeders around here. I wanted to voice my just dissatisfaction, the fact that this is even being brought up again. We discussed it a couple years ago. I made my point clear. I'm usually at home with my kids. I'm not, because I have to be here to restate the facts. Clearly, everybody here is missing out on other activities to restate how this is not something the community wants. We can go into it. I can keep sending emails. I can keep putting in remarks. We can keep publicizing it. But please understand that this is just something we don't want. There's a variety of reasons. I see you in the neighborhood. I volunteer with people in the neighborhood. We all know this is something we work together for, and I really want to make sure that we all here fully appreciate that this is not something we want. If you'd like, I can continue to message, and maybe you can continue to explain who this benefits. There's 28 maybe restaurants and other areas that are looking to have this, and are we really shooting for that minority community to just take a few $100,000 annually? We don't do a variety of other things. Pawn shops were brought up. Marijuana sales were pushed down. We don't see those things coming back every year. I don't understand why this needs to be coming back. I voted for some of the folks here. I didn't vote for some of the others. The votes are split. I just think the community fully appreciates that this isn't something we want. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Presson. I've been a resident of Downers Grove for about 13 years. I am against video gambling coming to Downers Grove. There's really not much more I could say than what my fellow residents have so eloquently stated tonight. I'm just going to go on record to say, please vote no, and if not, take it to a referendum. I find it very interesting that where the video gambling machines can be allowed, you have to have a liquor license. I think we know the House always wins. A very small percentage of people actually win gambling. So not only are we encouraging them to drink, but lose their money. I have a moral issue with that. We live in a nice town where we want to have great role models for our children. And I would not appreciate, I'm with Ann, seeing the blinky lights. I'd rather put ourselves with a Hinsdale or a Glen Ellen than a Roselle. So I just urge you to please vote no or send it to referendum. There are so many residents that I think don't even know that this is a big issue in our town. And if they were educated and had more information and a chance to vote, I think we have a strong no from across Downers Grove. So thank you for all that you do for our town, and please either vote no or take it to referendum. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Barnett and Village Council members. Thank you for everything that you do for our community. I am astonished with all of the comments this evening. I am extremely excited to hear that because I know I'm not alone. I do agree with most of the residents that have spoke this evening.
Name?
Dana Cox. I'm so sorry. I'm so overly. Yes, thank you. I'm a Downers Grove resident, and we have been for, my husband and I, for 16 years. We have 3 kids who are basically going to be teenagers in my house in a month. I'll have 3 teenagers. So they love to visit Downers Grove all the time. They love to go downtown. We love to go all over downtown, and I have been talking with them about it as well. And they said, no, Mom, we don't want to see those bright neon signs. We don't like those things. And obviously, they don't understand that, I mean, it does cheapen our community. It's a beautiful community. It is wonderful. Our restaurants and our bars are doing fabulous. Please don't cheapen them and put our residents at risk for future addictions and hurting their families and taking the money out of greed and selfishness, because they're doing wonderfully. I just wanted to go on record, and if you can't vote no, please bring it to the residents for a referendum. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam, or Samantha Schroeder, resident of Downers Grove. 2 years ago, when this first came up, I happened to be in town 2 years ago getting my hair done, actually, at Rocco & Rocco, and I learned that this topic had come up. So I came to the meeting, and this was 2 years ago, and the whole room was full of people talking about why they wanted this, and most of those people were business owners and or people affiliated with the gaming industry. So I got up and spoke. That was 2 years ago, and it was only Tom Schroeder and I, really, who were the only people that spoke up against it. So I find it crazy that 2 years later, that it's everyone that I talk to. I have yet to speak to anyone who is for it after they hear about the benefits to the community, because. For people who are like, I'd like to support the small businesses, after you present the facts to them, it becomes clear that that obviously the cons of this are going to outweigh the pros. So anyway, it's so great to have everyone here. I still think that a lot of the town does not know about this, and that's why it should be sent to referendum. I'd still like to meet people who are for this, and I'd like to hear why they are for it, other than someone who has an interest in a business or in gaming in general.
Good evening, Mayor Barnett and Council. As you probably remember, I was here 2 weeks ago, and I walked away. I came here as a simple, very simple, one way of looking at it.
Can you give us your name?
Mostly concerning.
Give us your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joyce. But I was simply coming here because of what I had seen over the weekend before in terms of the lights at Belmont and Maple, and concerned about that and concerned about how that would affect neighborhoods. But I came here and I walked away with a whole lot more concerns. And I'm a private person. This is really against who I am. I'm an observer. And even on social media, this was not brought up till recently, as somebody else has already said. Most of the people in this town don't know about this. And those who even talk about it often don't know have clarity on it. One of those things would be, well, again, you know, restaurants have game rooms, like pizza places, where the kids can go and play while the adults have a chance to have a conversation. And in terms of making this a really clear picture of the difference between the two, I think is really important. And then I came down to the liquor licenses, and it seems like this has become an emergency. We have to get this done now. We have to get this vote done before November, because they have to decide what kind of liquor license they're going for. And I'm a person who thinks if something has to be decided because it's suddenly an emergency, that really isn't an emergency, that's a problem. All the facts that one of you last time, and I don't remember which one it was, you mentioned the facts behind it in terms of how much benefit financially there really is, and even in terms of the businesses and how much they pay their people. People that don't have gaming pay their people more than those who don't. And I thought that was very interesting. So these simple concerns brought me to the last meeting, like I said, and I left with alarms going off my head. Number one, why the rush? Why not send it to referendum when all this affects all of the citizens? Anytime a vote comes up against a deadline, it raises warnings. It means that people never have a chance to object because they just didn't know about it. We have a problem. We no longer have a public bulletin board like the Downers Grove Reporter or another local paper which brings these issues up, and that of course often has opinions as well, but at least the community becomes aware. Right now, I don't think most of the community is aware. The only reason I became aware is because of those lights I saw, and then somebody brought something up online. I would never have connected it otherwise. Secondly, not knowing any of you by name and by face, except Mayor Barnett and Tully. I came with no expectation of what you stood for, but I learned two things that alarmed me. One of those was a person who was personally very concerned about gambling, but because of a promise to voters, felt like that person had to do the vote for it. And to me, when is conscience more important? Does my position, is it more important than actually voting what I know is right? And that's one thing that concerned me. And the second one was I had a personal chat with Mayor Tully at the break. And I had some things, and I came away with some strong concerns with what he had to say, another one among them that he had been asked by the Chamber of Commerce and certain business owners to advocate for this and push this through. One of the things that when we talked about signs, he said, oh, you don't have to worry about that. You know, there's already laws out there that will take care of it, and one of those things is square footage. Well, paper square footage on a window is a big difference than glaring lights in your face. I mean, it takes a whole lot less square footage, but the effect is far greater. And so I'm not thinking about the little, what do you call it, fluorescent signs that say open. I'm talking about these things that have become, as I went up and down the streets, all the major business things, and saw the lights, especially the LED ones. It really concerned me. So another one is, why were restaurants involved not named? Are the owners citizens of Downers Grove? And why was the supplier of the games involved last week? They spoke one after another, pushing for this being passed as an emergency again, and talked about the Moose Lodge. Well, that's a private club. My concern there would be if when they rent it out that they allow people to game. But other than that, they're a private club. It's a different thing than public establishments. And last of all, you can't trust forums such as Nextdoor to give out adequate, proper information. There's censorship there. And if we don't have an open forum, then it becomes difficult to trust the information we're getting. There needs to be some kind of public bulletin board where the issues are explained in plain English with the option to ask open questions for clarification and receive common sense answers. And I think that's, like I said, especially since we lost a newspaper that speaks for our village or speaks of the affairs of our village. We need to have better communication. People didn't know about this, they still don't. I am definitely against it, partly because I think it's rushed. I'm against any power that's used, which is why I think it needs to go to a referendum. Thank you.
Melissa Brenner, and I'm a 20-year resident of Downers Grove. I live on Prince Street. I previously sent in a letter about this. I am not in support of bringing video gaming to Downers Grove. I laid out some points in my letter. The thing that's just occurring to me now as I'm listening to this is that it just strikes me that it would be completely legitimate for the council to vote against doing this because that's preserving our village in the way it is now. But it would be really problematic to not take this to referendum and instead to take it upon the vote of 7 people to change the character of our village. So I would really like you to vote against it, but if you're not going to do that, I think you really need to consider whether you should have the power to change our village so fundamentally, with so many people objecting to it and changing the values and what somebody else said, the brand of our village. Thank you.
My name is David Mathias. I'm a 54-year resident of Downers Grove, 4th generation, and I'd like to say a student of this town. I born and raised here. I've watched this town go through many cycles. I remember when downtown was a vibrant town where we used to go to Gishi Shoes before school started to get our shoes. Go to Mokel's Hardware and see the nails in the bins. Go to Sears Hardware to get our clothes that were, Sears Roebuck was downtown and our clothes would get delivered. And then in the 80s in high school, I saw this town become pretty desolate. The most exciting thing to do was go to Walgreens and watch them change the signs in the windows. That's all this downtown had. I've seen Ogden Avenue be pretty desolate, and then I was lucky enough to be here still and watch the boom of downtown change to what it is today. Ogden Avenue cleaned up. 75th Street is turning its corner again, coming back into fruition. And so I came here tonight to learn about this because I really didn't know much about it. As many of you who've known me for a long time, I've been very involved in this village. I learned about this at dinner tonight. So to a lot of people's points, what does the village know about this? What about, we don't have the reporter anymore. We don't have a great way of learning about it. And I've listened to what a lot of people said tonight, and what I'm shocked by is I haven't learned any information on what we really gained from this. I read through the pamphlets, $250,000, $500,000, somewhere in that range, the village is going to gain from this, and we're going to sell our town out for that. I just don't see the benefits to this town, and after listening to the arguments, I wish there was another 20 people here who could tell me why we need this, why it's a benefit to our village. So I just want to go on the record as someone who builds homes in this town, also saying I can't remember the last time, selling a house or building a house in this town that someone came to me and said, they asked, do we have a pool? What's the library like? What's our school system like here? What's the police department like? What are the taxes like? I can't remember someone saying, what's the access to gambling? I don't remember that being brought up ever in 122 houses that I built in this town. And as a lifelong resident of this town, I don't remember someone saying, hey, we need some gambling here. So I just want to go on there. Thank you for your time.
My name is Kim Eckert. I've lived in Downers Grove for 30 years. So everybody in the room has been so eloquent in discussing the many facets of this issue. There's one that I haven't heard yet, and I wanted just to contribute. We hear that the businesses are saying that they're losing business to other establishments because they don't have video gaming. And I would just like to ask the question, have they considered what business they may lose by having video gaming? And I would say, pointing out, it's been referenced a couple times, I don't even know the name of the establishment, but the market at Maple and Belmont. I'm a big fan of shopping local and supporting our local businesses, and I can tell you, since I now have seen the slots signs in that store, I will not set foot in that store. I've never been in there, and I never will go in there. And I wonder if there are others in this room, it seems like there's overwhelming opposition to this notion. Are there others in the room who are going to act as I will, and I will not patronize those establishments? Just food for thought.
Okay, any others?
Tom Schroeder, Downers Grove resident for almost 20 years. Before I get into a few thoughts on video gaming, I have one housekeeping item. At the last meeting, I misspoke from information I was given regarding Naperville's split vote sending their video gambling ordinance to referendum. They did have a split vote, but it was regarding cannabis dispensaries, not video gambling, so I apologize for that misinformation. Their council, Naperville's, actually voted unanimously against video gambling. My continued thoughts on video gambling is as follows. We will continue to hear the debate on both sides talking about, does it fit with the Downers Grove image? Are we really so desperate we need the potential 250K of incremental gambling tax revenue, which is a small rounding error when considering our $55 million annual budget? We have social costs contributing to or adding to addiction. Will this affect our long-term property values and the ability to attract people to continue to want to move to and live in Downers Grove? Are these 10 proposed gambling licenses a slippery slope, and in a couple of years, 10 more will be issued, and then this will move into our downtown business district? Right now, it appears the underlying intention is to expand the video gambling to 37 locations and possibly more. If this were really a pilot program, it would either have a sunset clause and/or have an annual review provision included. To my understanding, it doesn't. The ordinance, as it's currently written, will exclude the downtown business district, but if this is so bad that we don't want it downtown, why then can we have it in neighborhoods along Ogden, 63rd, and 75th Street? Don't those neighborhoods matter? At this point, we've heard these main arguments batted around on both sides of video gambling. I've said since day one, every resident has an opinion, and that opinion is valid. And it isn't wrong, it's their opinion. For those of you not on social media, you should know that over the past month alone, there have been well over 400 comments on this topic. At times, there has been misinformation and neighbors not being so very nice to each other. I feel I've done my part correcting misinformation where I see it and attempt to make the peace. Every day, more and more people find out about video gambling, the video gambling ordinance before you. It is my contention that there is an overwhelming number of residents that don't want this versus a handful of restaurant owners and video gambling companies who stand to financially benefit that do want it. Typically, you guys get a small handful of emails from residents on any given topic that comes before you. Over the past month, you've received at a minimum 20 times that amount on this topic alone, and the responses have been overwhelmingly against video gambling. You were elected to represent what the village residents want. Knowing there is still only a small percentage of residents that know about this, and most are against video gambling, are you truly representing your residents? Or a small handful of restaurants, video gaming companies, a couple of your neighbors, and a few campaign promises you may have made? Please don't pass this ordinance with a 4-3 vote in favor of it. Instead, vote to send this to a referendum and let the residents vote the fate of their village. It will be a non-binding referendum, but this will give you a much larger sampling of what the residents want. Right now, you have a couple hundred sending in emails against it and a handful in favor of it, but that's still a small sampling, which can easily be skewed. With a typical 15% voter turnout next spring, you will get 7,000 to 8,000 votes, which is a much better sampling of your village. It is still a minority of the overall population, but it's a much better sample than a couple hundred. A couple of you feel that sending this referendum may not be a proper way to govern, but then you've also said there's certain situations that it is warranted. Have we ever sent items to referendum before? In 2010, the village placed 7 advisory items to referendum to let residents vote, including turn limits, consolidation of local government services, electrical aggregation authority, public pension reform, and 3 different questions related to the stormwater utility in 2016. It is therefore not unreasonable whatsoever now to ask for this ordinance to be sent to referendum and let the residents vote the fate of their village. What are you afraid of? And what is the real reason you are pushing so hard for something the majority clearly doesn't want and only a small handful want? You guys have so many more important items on your plate to work on that will benefit all of Downers Grove residents. If the village residents really want this, the referendum will pass, and you will have the weight of the referendum and the village behind you. You already have an ordinance drafted, so you'll be able to hit the ground running. But if the ordinance does not pass, now you know how the village really thinks about this topic, and democracy will have spoken. You are supposed to represent all of the village residents, not a small group. Trying to push this ordinance through with a split vote, knowing that the majority does not want this, does not feel or look right. And you're doing this for what, and at what cost? You will agree Most of the items of significance that you vote on pass with a 7-0 or 6-1 vote. Very rarely do you have a split vote on something with this great of magnitude. This just doesn't add up. So please see through all the valid opinions on both sides of this argument and vote to send this to referendum, vote to have this ordinance sent to referendum, and work diligently with each other and staff to make sure the wording is crystal clear so everyone understands exactly what they're voting on, and don't make it confusing like some try to say that Forest Parks was. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nell Sorensen, and my family just moved to Downers Grove recently. We love trying the restaurants, and I'm here to say that I do not want video gambling in Downers Grove, really anywhere. Frankly, if I had known this was under consideration, it would have impacted our decision to buy here. Apart from personal preference, there's no evidence that this has a positive economic impact on the town, or the majority of residents are for this change. Chris, I applaud the time and effort you took to research video gambling and the thoughtful takeaways during the October 3rd meeting. I would encourage the entire council to try to understand the true economic cost and residential preference before voting yes to gambling. I support the analysis from the Economic Development Agency and a referendum. This is not something that you want to rush through. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, any others?
Hello, Mayor and Board. I'm Bob Taft. Own a business here in Downers Grove for the last 25 years. Just wanted to touch on a couple of points real quick. We're not going to make it long. We had a grand total of 25 people come up to speak against video gaming, which equates out to 1/20th of 1%. 1/20th of 1% of the 50,000 residents in Downers Grove. So to say that the majority of the people are against is not accurate. The majority of the room may be, but not the majority of the people. And of those 25 people that came up to spoke, I can alleviate the fears of 24 of them with 4 statements. Number one, we're not opening a casino in downtown Downers Grove. This is something that will go into licensed establishments only. And on top of that, there will be 6 games in a room. No one can see them, no one can hear them, as the ordinance is written. It will be a private room that no one has to view. It will also not be downtown, just to be clear. Finally, we are not going to be what Belmont and Maple Avenue is. That's an unincorporated DuPage, not our Downers Grove jurisdiction. That's the reason they have the lights the way they are. Final statement is that the benefit to the community is simple. We're helping small businesses compete with businesses down the block. We often really put Downers Grove downtown up on a pedestal, which it deserves to be. It's a great area. But there are other businesses in town on the outskirts. Most people don't even realize that I'm in Downers Grove. They actually think I'm in Woodridge because of my proximity. Many people come into our establishment, end up leaving because of the fact that we do not have gaming. That being said, you're not just getting the gaming revenue. You're also getting the food and beverage tax. You're also getting people coming into other establishments in Downers Grove. While they travel to Downers Grove, they will also shop there, get gas, etc. It also helps keep some small businesses open, which employs people who work in Downers Grove and live in Downers Grove. It just keeps us competitive with the playing field that we have. Not everyone is downtown. That area, I understand the desire to not have it, but other parts of the town are also Downers Grove, also pay taxes to Downers Grove, and we should be able to compete with our competitors next door. Thank you.
Okay, any others? Okay. Council. Up to us. Got some additional comments, questions? Anybody want to start in? Nobody wants to say anything? Leslie, go ahead.
Sure.
Somebody's got some cuts.
Right. I'm going to try and kind of go through some of what the residents touched on.
and try and kind of process it as we go. First, I do think it is incredibly important to reiterate that the way the ordinance is written, you would, as mentioned, you would not see the lights, you would not hear anything, you would not see the gaming. Again, we have a strong side ordinance, and it is not downtown. I understand that folks are concerned about the slippery slope ordinance, but I would say that we are going to be at least here for another 2 years. And so if we know that something is going to be incredibly close, I, for one, would not be opposed to looking at it in a year again and having that in a clause. So I want to put that out there. One of the concerns, my biggest concern with a non-binding referendum is in the past, and pretty frequently, it has only ever been used as a political football. I am not interested in playing games with this community, having misinformation spread, which it already has online, because a lot of folks don't understand that we are not saying that this is going downtown. You know, we have tried to reiterate our signed ordinance. We have tried to discuss kind of all of the protections that we are going to put in place, knowing that this is a compromise. And my concern is that those misinterpretations and misconceptions are going to grow as this becomes more vocal and tears the community apart. I will say that if there is interest in a binding referendum, that is not something that we can do as a council, but that is something that residents may look to do on their own and can look to the Video Gaming Act for that. But, you know, as was mentioned in some of the non-binding referenda that we used, they were used as a political game. So I don't know if everybody remembers the Ogden Avenue when we were looking to potentially have a new police station. You know, there were some misinterpretations there. It was right after I moved to Downers Grove, and I remember that history not so fondly. I'm not interested in engaging in that level of political theater again, which is why I would encourage, if the community at large really does want this to be a binding referendum, that is something that the community can take up on their own, again, via the Video Gaming Act, which is referenced in our packet. In terms of some of the concerns that we have heard, I have attempted to do as much research as possible, asking staff, talking to business owners, talking to staff at businesses that both do allow and do not allow video gaming, patronizing those businesses. And I have just not found any conclusive data to support a lot of the concerns that we have heard in terms of property values, in terms of increasing, you know, thinking that we're going to have 10% of the community that will have a gambling addiction. Again, the large swaths of data for these comments are not there. And I'm going to echo some of the concerns that I had at the last meeting that, you know, there's a lot of conversation about looking down on some of the other communities that surround us that do this in terms of Woodbridge, Westmont. And I just want to suggest that we don't engage in some of those arguments. It is not helpful to disparage our neighbors, and it also can be incredibly negative for those who are interested in seeing this here. Part of the reason that I have spoken with some folks who support it, and because there is this incredibly negative perception of folks who do engage in some of the gaming, they're not comfortable coming to the podium and having those conversations. So I want to be mindful about the way that we are speaking of people who do enjoy video gaming. I have family members who live in Ohio and enjoy video gaming and have never thought anything differently of them. And I just think it's really important that we address some of these misconceptions. I think that covers most. We also did not get any facts and figures within these last 2 years. So the first time around this came, you know, our police department did not have a particular view on it either way. So we're kind of not really getting a lot of feedback from some of those agencies. But, you know, if there is interest and concern here, I could certainly support including into the provision that within 1 year, we kind of come back and take a look at it. It'll still be the same council that is here. And then we would have a little bit better of a picture if there is a market for it in Downers Grove or not. the reality is that, you know, Woodbridge, Darien, Westmont, a lot of our surrounding communities already have this, and I think we could probably all agree that folks are not going to be coming off the Metro BNSF to come game in the outskirts of Downers Grove. So realistically, if there is a market there for it and there are people within Downers Grove that will enjoy it, we'll probably know that within a year. And I am comfortable with looking into that, knowing that I just don't see the evidence-based negatives that would outweigh the potential benefit for some of the businesses, again, who are on the outskirts of town to be able to compete with some of our neighbors. So I don't know how some of my fellow commissioners feel about that, but I would be, you know, interested in then trying to reach out even further and compromise more and say, you know, we can take this up in a year if this does move forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Anybody? This is intended to be more discussionary too, guys.
Yeah.
Not speeches. Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, I again want to remind folks that thanks to the direction given by this council and the draft ordinance that was written by staff, this isn't going to be the way that it's been implemented in some of these other communities that you may have experienced, or up on Maple and Belmont at the establishment there. We've had the opportunity to learn from some of these other communities and craft a code accordingly with most notably no parlors, no gas stations, as was mentioned by somebody else, and other parameters that we've put in place to keep this not looking like some of those other places. We, as mentioned before, there's separated rooms to keep from noise and light pollution, and of course not in the downtown. I do want to address what is the main concern that I think most people are feeling is the aesthetic that is sometimes associated with gaming. As I suggested at the last meeting, I would encourage that we increase our efforts to enforce the current code, which bans the majority of some of these tacky signs that we see not only for gaming but for other products as well. And I think we should enforce it at all times. Also, I would like to see maybe making the infraction penalized at the highest possible fine of $750. I don't think that's a mistake that folks will make twice. In regards to the data and the facts, I feel like, I think we've realized that a lot of this data that can be manipulated and distributed to come to whatever conclusion we really desire, so I don't really want to go back and forth on that. I would like to address one piece of the ordinance and the way it's written, and suggests exempting Club C licenses from the limit of 10 restaurants. Since we're in the spirit of complying with the state's intent to allow clubs regardless of municipality's regulation, I feel like doing that would avoid an inevitable conflict with when one of these clubs comes up and there's no more licenses left to give. So I'd like to hear what other people on the council have to say about that. And that's it, Mayor.
Thanks, Danny. Leslie, any comments about the club count, club licenses versus count? I mean, we're discussing here, and we're potentially adjusting an ordinance that may or may not be voted on next week, so.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as of now, I would be more comfortable if we just stuck with the 10 straight, as we kind of discussed. I think it's a more clean number for us to kind of evaluate and see how things are going, but that's where I'm at now.
Okay. Others should comment on that as we go. Chris?
Yeah, I think I'll address that. I think I first want to also make a few general comments, and I'm happy to join that conversation. I do want to thank everyone who has reached out to us as a council. As I said last time, the vast majority of that feedback we've received has been against this, which is the position I also take. I spoke at length last time about why I'm against this. It's not going to lower our taxes or provide our village what I can see any value. The beneficiaries are the terminal operators and a handful of restaurant owners, not the residents. I have seen no evidence of any disadvantages our restaurants are at. On the contrary, we've seen significant growth in restaurant revenue since COVID. I mentioned that this last time, but I think we only lost a couple restaurants during COVID, and I do believe that is large part of the support of this community to those restaurants. I fully agree with many of the speakers here tonight with the outpouring of that feedback. I just don't buy the idea that there's a silent majority not willing to come and say they want it in town. But there is a super simple way to address that, and that is putting this out to a referendum. And I hope we can maybe discuss that as a council. We don't have a lot of information on the impact of this, because when the state passed video gaming back in 2012, they did so with no real way to measure the impact, and certainly no funding to do that. We do know studies show increased access leads to more addiction, and we also know that this is a different kind of betting, different than sports and lottery, because these machines and their algorithms are designed to keep people seated at them. They use lights and sounds that trigger more activity, more commitment to the machines, and it's just a different type of gaming. We haven't talked about that, but it is. And I will lastly say that my biggest concern now is that this is a Trojan horse. We say this is just the beginning. We talk about this being extremely restrictive, but we cannot guarantee that it will stay that way. Yes, this council has a lot to say, but we're here for 2 years, and then the next one. We plan to talk about the sign ordinance, for example. That's one of our lists. And I think some here are looking to expand that, which might include like a digital sign. Well, that's going to apply to everybody. We're not going to be able to restrict a certain business from doing certain signage if we go that way. That's just one example, and I think we're going to run into a situation, I think, where we're going to offer very limited number of licenses. You have restaurants who are going to be left out of this, who are going to be clamoring, saying, why not me too? And that pressure, much like the pressure that appears to have been placed on us to actually put this through, I think is just going to grow. And I just simply don't feel anything compelling or any compelling reason to be the start of that. So I'll end there. In terms of the limitations, since we were talking about the limitations, I agree it should be 10. I would also further say that we reserve 2 of those 10, so the 10 would include the one that's already at the Moose, and that we reserve 2 of those for the other 2 clubs. Although they haven't applied for those licenses, the state has mandated that they can have them. So I think it would be a wise decision to keep those earmarked for those organizations should they take those. And I see no interest in moving this forward at all, but certainly no interest in expanding that. I'll just continue on because I'm on a roll here. I think unless we want to go, Mayor, you're running the meeting, I guess, unless we want to go item by item.
I suspect we're going to come back around. Go ahead if you've got it.
Yeah.
You're on a roll, go.
Yeah, a couple other things. I think last time we talked about the fee structure. I have no interest in lowering the fee structure. I think it's appropriate. I also feel like since we are closing off this room, I think there should be a requirement for adding a security camera. This would be you're talking about a 7-foot wall. I don't know if that was part of the current one.
It's required by the state regs.
Okay, thank you, that's great. Someone also brought up building owner approval, which is essentially if someone's leasing out the space, that the building owner signs some sort of letter that they know what's going on. I fully support this. I've talked to some retail, commercial professionals who sell retail spaces. There are definitely businesses who will not be in strip malls, in the same strip mall as a restaurant that has gaming. So we definitely want to make sure that those building owners have an opportunity for disclosure there. And then I think the last thing is just how these licenses might be allocated. We've talked a lot about unfair competition with other municipalities, which I just simply don't buy. But I want to be, it is important that the 28 establishments, and it's not 37 because 37 fall in the zoning or that would be available, but they haven't all had a year of a liquor license, right? So it's really 28 that would be available to this. Is that correct? I think that's how I read that.
No, we've already excluded those. I believe it's 38.
Oh, it's 37? Okay. So there's more there that have the opportunity to have this. I think given the makeup of the list of establishments, I think we have a varied level, I think these folks will have a varied level of understanding of this opportunity. So we have some mom and pop, one store owner restaurants, you have some chain restaurants there, Portillo's I think is one, some regional players, and I think that there's probably an opportunity for them to learn more about what this is, what it might take to have a gaming license. I think the idea of sort of they go and get the state approval, then they come to us and apply, doesn't quite feel as fair. I think there are some that have more resources. What I would like to see is a 120-day window for establishments to understand this and sort of get the paperwork going with the state and do what it takes to become eligible. Then we would allow all the qualifying establishments to apply, and then we as a village pick a day and do a lottery for who gets these licenses. I think we can all respect that as a fair approach, as we've been a part of a similar process during our election, right? To be on the ballot, we have to have certain signatures, but there's a lottery drawn for the order of what we're on, and I think that's a similar thing here. I think we need to be fair. I think there are probably some restaurants who just by the nature of their size have an advantage, and I'd want to mitigate that and make sure that we're being as fair across the board and make this truly a true lottery to get this license. But again, I don't want to see it in town. Thank you.
If I could, Mayor, just to make sure we're all talking about the same universe of eligible businesses under the draft ordinance. Draft ordinance would make available video gaming licenses to liquor license holders in restaurant category, but excluding those in the downtown. There are 29 of those.
29?
Those establishments holding club liquor licenses, there are 3 of those.
Got it.
And those establishments holding recreational facility liquor license, there are 5 of those. So I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
37 total, but you had mentioned a 20-something number, that's the 29, so that's in there, just to clarify. Thank you.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. Others? Mike?
So, just want to start off by saying, if I fundamentally believe that this was affecting the legacy of our town, quote, changing the character of our town, was changing the character of our village so fundamentally, selling our town out, that this was such a decision of such great magnitude, I would probably see those as good reasons to take away people's freedom of choice to participate in this, whether it be a business owner or a resident. But I simply do not. And for that reason, I would not be in favor of a referendum either. I recognize it might be true. Maybe the majority in town don't agree that we should have a right or a freedom to choose. But I think there's a reason why there's 7 council members up here, and from time to time, maybe 1 or 2 of us ends up representing the lesser voice in all of this. So I'm not sure that just because the majority of people that are speaking to us right now want us to do something, that's good reason to do it. And as was pointed out earlier, 15% turnout at an election. We never really get to know what the majority of people want, and it is a shame that we don't have the Downers Grove Reporter anymore, and vehicles like that to keep people informed. And I sympathize with that and have been frustrated by that as well. I guess in terms of the idea that we would either include those 3 club licenses within the 10 or add to it, basically saying they're excluded from the 10. I'm open for conversation on that. I'm intrigued by the lottery idea. There's a fairness about that that appeals to me. So, other than that, I have nothing else to add at this point.
Chris mentioned the lease issue. Anybody have any, who's already spoken, have any thoughts on that?
The what issue?
So what Chris is referring to, I think, jump in if I'm wrong, but in our liquor license process, one of the things we require for a liquor license holder is if they are not the owner of the building, their lease has to specifically identify that the owner of the building knows they will be engaging in the sale of alcohol. There was a conversation the last time we talked about this, about adding that as a requirement to the VG license. And so I think I heard Chris saying he thinks that's a good idea, and it's part of what we're doing here is trying to arrive at an ordinance that we might consider next week. So what do others think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree right now as well.
Okay. Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't miss anything, did I?
We got to get better security, though.
Yes, you do. So, with all respect to Commissioner Davenport, last I checked, this was still a government of, for, and by the people. And the people have overwhelmingly spoken, or the people that have overwhelmingly spoken against video gaming in Downers Grove restaurants. And I just don't see why you would want to dismiss that, and I don't see why you would want to avoid an opportunity to see if that silent majority exists or not. If this truly is a divided question in a divided community, let them speak. So, suffice it to say, I'm against this. And there were, obviously, I missed a lot of conversation from last week, and there were a lot of things said then. I'm not going to go back and rehash all of it. Commissioner Gilmartin, I thought, has done a phenomenal job laying out his thinking, and I agree with pretty much everything he said over the last couple of meetings. Now, this isn't some grand compromise. This isn't some opportunity to find an end solution. What this is bringing video gaming to Downers. It's a yes or no, up or down. You have it or you don't. So the idea that this is somehow a compromise, I think, is fallacy. This isn't somebody's monthly poker game, and it's not somebody putting DraftKings on their phone. Your monthly poker game isn't out next to somebody else when you're out to dinner. This is out there. And if it wasn't a change to the character of town, if it wasn't a change to how folks enjoy their restaurants and how other folks are going to see us, then why are you hiding it? Why are we putting it behind a wall? Why are we keeping it silent? Why are we limiting it in the way we are? Why are we keeping it out of downtown? All of these things, all of these limitations that they feel are necessary are because this is a fundamental change to our town. And it demonstrates that it's out of step with the values of Downers Grove. You have to, as Commissioner Gilmartin mentioned, keep in mind the sign ordinance. There is a majority up here to change the sign ordinance in many ways. We haven't had that conversation yet, but I can tell you from offline conversations, things like copy changing signs are coming in some way, shape, or form. More electronic signage coming in some way, shape, or form. And all of that is going to end up impacting the signs that would come along with this. The idea that somehow this is leveling the playing field with other communities, all you're doing is creating winners and losers within Downers Grove. by saying you can have it if you're on Ogden Avenue or on 75th Street, but not if you're on Main Street. Can't have it if you're there. Not if you're on Curtis Street. Can't have it if you're there. You're creating the same problem that you claim to be solving. And I really do believe that this is a Trojan horse. It's like you're reading my notes. The idea that this isn't somehow going to end up elsewhere in town if it passes now, if you really believe that, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. Yeah. And on top of all of that, we have gotten some emails, a decent number, coming from folks who are in favor of gaming. This, to borrow a term from a friend of mine who in a previous life was a lobbyist, looks to me like astroturfing. It's what you do when you don't have the grassroots with you. You make it look like you have them. You create them out of nowhere. And we've seen a media push. We've seen sort of copy and paste emails. We've seen marketing materials. Some of them even bearing the logo of the Village of Downers Grove. And I'm sorry, that's just untoward. It's just not right. The fact of the matter is, when you dig into the data, the overwhelming number of village residents who have spoken out on this have said no. I'm with them. And if you think I'm wrong, if my colleagues think I'm wrong, then let's put it to a vote of the people. Give them their say. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. But there's just no groundswell for this. There's no overwhelming push. Gimme gaming. Gee, Downers Grove isn't complete without video gaming. Not one person has said that to me. And if somebody stands up and says it tonight, God bless them. It'll be the first time I hear it. But this, in my mind, has got to be a no. And if it's not, it's got to be send it to the people and let them choose. Thank you, Mayor.
Couple of things I had mentioned last time too, that I'd like to include in this ordinance, some signage requirements. People want to head nod or not head nod. I'm talking about the signs that we have, some similar to an alcohol, where it says this date. It also warns, pregnant people, etc. It also provides opportunities to get the help you need, because that is actually an issue, which is why the state is engaged in this business. So I'd like to include that requirement in whatever these spaces are. So anybody not want to do that? I do also, if this is going to go ahead, I also like Chris's idea about a lottery and a period of time. We're not always successful up here, but I personally, and I know all the colleagues I've worked with, have tried very hard to apply the law equally in our community. And sometimes that's to people's dismay, because things go slower or they don't get there to participate in the way they might want. But in this case, there is simply no question what this is. This is an opportunity for 6 or 7 businesses to make a bunch of extra money. Businesses that are here today, have been here for a decade, some of them 2, who would like a little extra money. All right, fine. But it would be ridiculous for the village to take the position that we're going to not make that accessible to all those 39 or whatever the hell the number is on an equal basis. And the truth is, there are Portillos and there are, the other end of the spectrum. There are people who are starting businesses. There are people who are still trying to figure out what it means to order the right food on time. It's going to be a challenge, and they should all have that opportunity if we're going to do this. I don't think we ought to do it. But if we are, we ought to try and make it as equal as possible. Trojan horse, we're all going to sit up here and we're all going to say that's not the case, because some of us are trying to find a way to make this work and some of us are not, but nobody wants to act like they're trying to pull something over. I don't think anybody is, but let's be clear. One of the things I have the privilege of, or not privilege of, is being the liquor commissioner by state definition, so that means people call me. So I've heard from 2 hotels, I've heard from a convenience store owner, I've heard from our gas station operators with the exact same line. I need it. Do you know how much prices are going up? Payroll, labor is higher, as if that's somehow unique to these businesses. And because there's people doing this in our community next door, I've got to be able to compete. So it's not going away. It didn't go away when we tabled it last time. Neither are these expansions of it going away. We heard from, I think Phil just walked in, heard from Ballydoyle. It obviously would be helpful to Ballydoyle. We've heard from another round. It would obviously be helpful to them. Frankly, it would be helpful to the library. Anybody that can put 5 or 6 machines in and generate some zero overhead cash flow is going to see a benefit from this. So it's not, this isn't some sort of altruistic opportunity to express your freedom of choice. All the village does is, in our business, is limit choice. That's all we do. We do it through building permits, we do it through setbacks, we do it through, pick your poison about what we do. That's what we do. We limit choice. And, you know, I think this needs to be at least more clearly spoken of. This is 7 businesses successfully asking for an opportunity for a little more revenue. Businesses who are here today, I don't know if they're failing or not, but they've been here for a long time. We had one restaurant leave recently, and the rumor was that they left in part because of their inability to access gaming. They were backfilled in like 5 minutes. There are people starting businesses right now, restaurants in Downers Grove. There are people pouring pads to build new ones right now in Downers Grove. That's a heck of an investment without this in front of them. This is a value decision about what you think your community should be. That's what I think it is. I don't think it's a right or wrong. It pains me to sometimes say that because I don't think it's a right or wrong. I think it's a personal value decision. But it kind of leads me to this question about how we're operating. I got to take a little exception to this political football thing, Leslie. It may have been, maybe it was, but assuming any use of referendum is inherently a political football is kind of belies the concept that that's in fact one of the options available to us. It is a piece of governing. It is a hammer in our toolbox or a screwdriver. We've used it, whatever the number is, a half a dozen times in the last decade. Using it again is not automatically some sort of a scam or political game. Here's the situation. It doesn't provide the village any material value, okay? That's the first thing, less than 0.5% on our actual budget. It provides a very small number of people who will be selected by the village a big advantage. It does that. And the only real input we've gotten is most of the residents who know what they think they know, whether it's complete right or wrong, are opposed to it. And the last piece is we've got a divided council. That sets up, in my mind, for asking for a referendum. It sets up for another, whatever it is, between now and March or April, 120 days or whatever, for people to get up to speed and informed. It also sets up, because it is different. If we were sitting up here and it was 7-0, I would suggest there's probably information that isn't the same between the council and the staff and the community. That's not the case. This isn't about stop sign warrants. This isn't about Illinois EPA's opinion on stormwater. It's just not. It's a values decision. And values decisions are made often imperfectly and beyond data. So I've made pretty clear that I'm opposed to this thing. That isn't going to change ever. I go back and one of the things I've said often up here is how serious are we? And I think this is one of those instances where we should get serious enough to ask for the input of our community. I would like us to consider a referendum. I don't know if any, guys, stop. Seriously, guys. I'm sure some people appreciate that and some don't, but seriously, that's not how we're going to run this. That process is one that I've been party to, I think, 5 times. I think there's been 5 referendums during my tenure up here. And what they have always done is provided a lot more input, and it will be imperfect. We get to 51-49, one way or another, and on a non-binding situation, we're still going to have to make a decision. But a 4-3 vote will be reflective of the community at that point, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. If we come back with a 75-30, 75-25 kind of a thing, or an 80-20 kind of a thing, either way, we'll know, right? We'll know. But it is something that is, I think is materially different than a lot of the decisions we make, because it's not technical in nature, guys. It's just not. This is, I think back to, some people have cited marijuana, and one of the differences on marijuana was we didn't do it, and then we did it with a United Council. That was a big difference. This is a big deal to a lot of people, and whether they're right or whether they know everything or not, it's still their community. It's a big deal to them. And we aren't aligned. If we were aligned, I would be singing a different tune, because I know a lot of times we get a group of people in the audience and a bombardment of emails, but we are aligned here as those representatives that we talk about, that we are. But here we're not. We're just not. So I think it's a different situation that warrants that. I do still think we're setting ourselves up for a continuous ask, because if the people who are asking are sincere, and if the chamber is sincere, let's assume they are, right? Why not? Then all those same reasons apply to a host of businesses. Applies to every convenience store and gas station in town. It just does. So it's an important thing to not lose sight of. It is, we can say 7 people and we can just talk about Ogden Avenue all we want. But the same thing that got us here, a group of really motivated folks specifically asking for something, which is their right to do, should be expected to continue. I mean, it just should. So the 5 of us sitting here, or 6 of us, or 7 of us saying, well, it isn't ever going to be different, is probably over our skis and what we can commit to. You need to know we have actually gotten those inquiries already. So, Dave and Enza, I heard this lease thing kick around, signage kick around, the lottery thing kick around. I think those are slight adjustments to what's proposed. I also think we're getting pretty much everybody head nodding on that. Are you clear?
Those are our notes on that as well, Mayor. So when we present the draft ordinance next time, it will include those 3 changes: owner consent required, interior warning signs, and the lottery approach to the license application process. Did we hear that correctly from the council?
Everybody feel like that's captures it? Hang on, Chris. One thing, I'm almost done. I'm on a roll now. Me too. This is what this is supposed to be, guys, actual conversations. I don't know if I apologize if I missed it, and maybe there was no answer to it, but what is our expected, let's assume that this becomes an ordinance. What is the expected process for, I'm going to use the word control by, and you know what I mean by it. What do we expect to do, and how do we expect to structure that as it relates to control buys? Is it going to be like an add-on to a liquor control buy? Will it be a separate activity? Will it happen annually? What do we think that looks like? It seems like it's an important thing.
We do know that the state obviously will enforce the gaming portion of this. We as a village, through code enforcement or through the police department, will enforce the actual ordinance as written. So yes, we could do control buys to determine if under 21 are in the gaming room and things of that nature, but really the other provisions of the ordinance will be enforced by a code enforcement officer, just typical.
Yeah, but code enforcement officers are generally enforcing based on complaints.
Correct.
Whereas control buys are an intentional, structured program of proactively seeking to observe. They're very different.
Right, we do get into establishments on an annual basis during regular inspections, so those types of things will be inspected on an annual basis. We certainly can add the control by component, just like we do with the liquor portion.
I'd like to see that as well.
I would too.
All right, go ahead.
Liza, you mentioned something about if after a year it wasn't working. Can you expound on that, or just expand on that a bit, of what maybe you wasn't quite sure what you meant by that?
Sure. I mean, it's not quite a sunset clause, because
Yeah.
a sunset clause would say, like, unless we chose to renew it, then it kind of goes away. But we could set a date a year after an ordinance was passed to say we are going to, request that staff give us, data on whatever it is that we might agree to as a council, and then revisit it in 1 year to see if it is meeting the expectations or if we have any concerns with it.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I do want to say the concept of a Trojan horse, which Commissioner Jose stole from my notes, was not an indication of what I think this council is trying to do. I think it's more in line with what the mayor just discussed about those folks who are pushing for it that won't have it. So I just wanted to be clear there. I did have a question about the cafes, and I know this prohibits cafes, but the wording that talks about the percentage, if I can just read the paragraph and then maybe help me answer a question. It says, the percentage of total revenue from video gaming is one of 3 components of the definition of a video gaming cafe. To be defined as a cafe, all 3 components would have to be met. The first 2 components, the primary focus of the business is video gaming, and the sale and service of food and beverages is incidental to video gaming, are subjective measures. Establishments with video gaming revenue greater than 25% of gross revenue would not automatically classify the establishment as a video gaming cafe. Determining whether an establishment meets the definition of a video gaming cafe would be handled on a case-by-case basis. So I'm trying to understand the subjective nature and how we might enforce that.
Yeah, the good news is there are other portions of this draft ordinance which are crystal clear in terms of video gaming room size, some of the other things that are in there. And I think when you take that, not only the sections you read, Commissioner Gilmartin, but the other sections, I think we have a pretty objective way of going about determining whether it would be a cafe under the ordinance. And if it were a cafe, then they would not be allowed to operate in that same manner going forward. So we agree, that's why we put in the staff report, they're very subjective. Our hope is that, and by design, that the other components would make it more clear, not just this one.
Okay. And then the consequences, if they do meet those standards, is it just simply losing the license?
It would be a revocation of their license.
Okay, and is that?
Because they would no longer be eligible for that license.
I see.
Including, I think there's a tie to the liquor license, the video gaming license that was, Commissioner Jose had asked about that offline the other day too, that they're tied together.
So if they lost the gaming license, they would also lose the liquor license. Okay, thank you.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa, right? I did read
Yes.
that. Yes.
Just the summary, just to read from our staff report in the summary in the at-a-glance section, if the underlying liquor license gets suspended or revoked for a violation, so too will the video gaming license and vice versa.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. There is one other thing that Commissioner Glover had mentioned during last week's comments. The idea of, should this pass, dedicating the funding to filling the police and fire pensions. Given the obligations, only continue to rise, I think that's actually a great idea, and I would love it if my colleagues would include that in the draft ordinance.
Leslie's thinking yes, I'm thinking yes. Mike? Chris?
I think I would prefer to see it going towards our social services, but I might be outnumbered.
Mike, any thoughts?
I prefer it not be earmarked.
Not be earmarked?
So good, I just want to make sure, do we get majority there that for draft, for just head nods on the draft ordinance coming forward next month?
I think you got 4.
Yeah, Danny, if you're still thinking that way, then yeah, it's 4.
Dedicate revenue to public safety pension required contributions. Got it, thank you.
Well, if you wanted to, include it in the smoothing method that we're adopting,
Yes.
I think that would.
That'll be introduced in the budget just a couple weeks.
Right.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just have a couple follow-ups. One, again, kind of reiterating my concern with a referendum, as you mentioned it. We are not at a place now where we can backtrack to correct the flames that have been fanned with regard to some of the misconceptions about, what we're really looking at here. And so again, I just have a much greater comfort level with a resident-led effort for a binding referendum than I do for one that is led by us. I do think that most of the non-binding referendums that we've seen, there's always going to be a value-based component. So, in one we talked about the stormwater fees. Go back to those and some of the conversations that we had about who it applies to and who it doesn't. There's a values, right, a value statement there. So I do think there's always going to be a values assessment associated with it. But I would have much greater confidence in a resident-led effort, given the fact that we now kind of can't go back and do some of these corrections of some of the misconceptions that have been kind of tossed around out there. And knowing that it is 15% turnout in some of these elections. If we win a referendum round, I feel a little bit more comfortable with the general election because we will get a better representation of the community in a November election versus a primary. And then the other thing that's always been rolling around in my head is, I've mentioned it before, kind of our surrounding communities, Woodridge area and Westmont, kind of a lot of the ones that touch us, Lombard, do allow this, right? And so realistically, if the residents don't support it and there isn't a market, it's not going to be a benefit to our businesses. They're not going to be seeing people coming in from those towns because it already exists there. So that kind of goes to my argument of we have been hearing this for years, right, from folks. And to be real clear, I have no ties to the Chamber of Commerce or to any of the businesses in town. I work at a healthcare nonprofit. I'm originally from Ohio and my whole family is there. So I am not doing this because I have some, hidden tie to anything. I don't. I have frequented businesses. In fact, last Sunday, I went to one in Westmont with friends because they know the owner that has them out in the open. And I've had those conversations, with my daughter as well. But if there is no market in Downers Grove, then I don't think we will see folks clamoring. And I think that if we, again, I'm comfortable setting that year date to kind of see how this really is coming to fruition in Downers Grove to see if this is a value add for our businesses and see if residents are engaging in it responsibly or not. And so I think that's a reasonable way to kind of test what this might look like in Downers Grove. So it's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure who's fanning what flames, but there's a lot of information floating around out there, and I guess not all of it necessarily accurate. All that said, I'm curious how a resident-led referendum campaign would clear up misconceptions that a village-initiated referendum wouldn't. But I guess more important, in the event of a resident-led referendum campaign, would you, number one, table this to allow that to take place? Or number two, commit to live by the results?
Oh, I think if it's a binding referendum, we have to commit to it. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Y'all hear that?
Yeah. You have to if it's a binding referendum. You don't have a choice.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Time question. You're going to give people time?
I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have. Yeah, I think we should. I would be fine. I personally don't think we need I understand the purpose of November 1st, but realistically, these folks are not going to be able to apply to it. They're going to need a liquor license in November anyway, so I think it's kind of an arbitrary deadline. But
well, the November deadline is, I don't know if it's arbitrary.
Right.
If this were to pass, and even not be sorted out, let's just assume it were to pass and not get sorted out for whatever reason, 120 days or whatever. Under the current structure, some businesses downtown would apply for a new type of license. That's the only ones that would really be affected. that license would prohibit them
Right.
from receiving a VG license. So that November 1st date is real and meaningful, even if this doesn't happen either way. I mean, those that would be eligible are unaffected, but a group would have a different environment to apply in.
But is it also accurate that we were considering one regardless because of outdoor dining and some of those concerns as well?
No, that was an additional sort of code cleanup that was happening in parallel. Yeah.
And just to be clear, that liquor license is being created solely to exclude downtown businesses from having this. It's the first time, as a village, we've ever created a liquor license to exclude a business from doing something. And then the second thing I wanted just to mention, the idea of that the business is putting this in there, and if the business comes, it will work. I think the one thing we have to keep in mind is that this is a very low-cost, high-profit investment for a business. Yes, there's some sunk cost in building a room and, but a lot of the heavy lifting is done by these terminal operators. These businesses, it is not like they're building a building to serve French fries. It is essentially a holding place for other revenue for revenue just to come out of. So I don't, all due respect, I don't see this as like an investment per se. There are costs to it, but the margins on it are so far above what I see as a typical business margin that it doesn't quite feel the same as it. The risk is very, very low. It's very low. Even if, yeah, it's very low.
Mike?
So I have a question about, for staff, about the enforcement, particularly making sure that something doesn't rise to the level of a video cafe or gaming cafe. The renewal application, is there a way to craft that language so that we're a little more explicit in asking, them to submit the data and such to prove that they're not meeting the standard of a video gaming cafe?
We certainly could on an application. They are certainly always required to provide the layout. To Dave's point, we would be able to verify all that. So
it's all that data that we were questioning, just making sure that that's receiving that data and that proving process is explicitly an expectation of the ordinance.
In the past, when we had some of that long time ago on alcohol, that was fuzzy. But we would have a better handle on that because of the food and beverage tax, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We'd certainly have more data than we did in the past.
Okay. Anyone else for tonight? Okay, let's move on.
Just to clarify, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So the draft ordinance that we will prepare for the next council consideration will include the concept of owner consent, interior warning signs, the lottery approach to licensed applications and distribution. And there's one more thing.
The directing the revenue to public safety pension.
Okay, so that's.
Excuse me, Mayor, can I ask the other commissioners' thoughts on Leslie's idea of a 1-year check-in? I think I wanted to hear a little more on, not from you, Leslie,
No,
per
but
se.
I do want to be clear, because that 1-year check-in then could also theoretically, say even if it moves forward, that 1-year check-in could also theoretically then incorporate if, a binding referendum were to come forward, it would give us the opportunity to have conversations even further. So I think that, to me, that kind of covers all of the bases of the concerns of, we can, even if we do move forward, then we can still have a conversation as a council in a year.
I think my interest in the 1-year check-in would be a sunsetting clause. I think it would be that it would not pass unless we as a council approved it again. That would be my interest in it.
Just want to jump in for clarification here. I was just talking with Enzo offline. The idea of directing staff to bring forth another discussion with some data, that doesn't go in the ordinance. That's just tell us that and we'll do it. A sunset clause is something that if
Right.
you want to do that, would
Right.
have to be in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for my part, I think a one-year check-in really doesn't mean anything. I mean, we can ask staff for data anytime, and, I mean, to be candid, anybody could bring up whatever on new business, and it'd be, potentially on an agenda in a couple of weeks. So I think it's unnecessary. The sunset clause, should this pass, I would be very interested in. Although I'd rather see us push a pause button and allow for a referendum, and whether it's at the primary or in the November general election next year.
I agree with that.
Anybody else got any one-year check-in versus sunset clause comments? Don't like either of them?
I agree with Commissioner Jose's comment that it really doesn't, we can check in on it anytime we want. So, no, I'm not interested in a sunset clause because then I just get to debate this whole thing again ad nauseum a year from now. And I'd not automatically obligate myself to that.
I'm also not interested in a sunset clause.
Leslie, you were looking for a check-in. Any thoughts on a sunset clause?
I'm kind of the same mindset. Again, I still do have some concerns about, continuing misconceptions and kind of all of that. And so I think a sunset clause would just be another opportunity for everybody to kind of, I don't want to say rile their bases, but it's another potential opportunity for the spread of misinformation that I am not interested in debating that back and forth again. We've had a lot. It's been 2 years now, right? We did this 2 years ago, and we're doing it again. We've had an election since then. We've had a lot of conversations about this. I'm sure, just like you folks, I've had a lot of conversations with everybody in my circle. And there is a desire from most people that I have a conversation with not to hash this out to death over the course of 3 years. So I think that our best bet is to just do a check-in after a year and see where it is. And again, if we do end up with a group of residents who are interested in kind of taking up that more binding version, then obviously I would follow whatever the residents desired at that point. But I am not interested in us leading that again.
So that does not have a majority. Because I hate the whole thing, would love to have an opportunity to can it later. I'd be up for that. But that's not going to see a majority up here.
So the last question we have just is schedule. When we put together our plan and approach to this discussion, we had targeted next week when we expect all 7 council members to be present as the time we would place it on the active agenda as revised, which provides an opportunity for the council to vote, but not an obligation. That is our current plan unless we hear otherwise, but we're just checking in.
I think that's probably still the plan.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all the staff had on that item. We ready to go to the next item, council? Okay.
Let's move on, Dave.
The second and final item on tonight's first reading agenda is an ordinance considering amendments to certain aspects of our zoning ordinance. Here to provide background information on that is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Thank you, Manager Fieldman. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Manager Fieldman noted, there we go. The items tonight I'm presenting is zoning ordinance text amendments. About every 18 months or so, the staff proposes new updates to the zoning ordinance. As development occurs and we get questions from residents or developers about code sections, staff takes an opportunity to document those and look at those in a timely manner and propose any clarifications or modifications before you. So one of the key things tonight is the non-conforming structures and uses provisions. The current code notes that if more than 50% of the market value of a structure as determined by the owner's certified appraiser, the structure may not be reestablished except in conformance with all zoning ordinance regulations. So this comes down into typically homes and setbacks and not meeting regulations. The appraisals can vary in quality and open themselves up to a lot of third-party analysis and review that might be subjective. So the proposal before you tonight is staff is looking for a more tangible and reliable process to determine the loss of non-conforming status. So the proposal is to determine the linear feet of an exterior wall that's removed. If that is over 50%, as in the graphic here shown, first story, second story. If it's over 50%, then the building would have to be brought into compliance. So that's one of the key changes that's being proposed tonight. The other items and the other amendments are minor clarifications and modifications. We're requiring bicycle parking in multifamily residential, clarifying open design fence language, it's a little ambiguous, and then clarifying a butterfly roof eave height. As we get into some more modern buildings, that's a butterfly eave on the picture below. The Planning Commission did consider the amendments at their September 18th meeting and found the text amendments met the approval criteria and recommended approval. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you tonight, Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Any comments or questions from the audience on this? Comments, questions from the council?
Just
Mike, please.
my architectural background, I'm in support of staff's recommendations here. Cleans things up and prevents people like me from trying to manipulate what's 50% and what's not. So, seriously, it is a bit of a game, and this is good that we tighten these things up. So clarity is good.
The others? Okay, thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Mayor.
That ends our first reading tonight, Mayor.
Attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 items to present tonight. The first is an ordinance amending certain zoning ordinance regarding the text amendments that Stan just discussed, and the second is an ordinance establishing video gaming regulations. Both will be on next week's active agenda.
Thank you. We're moving on to the mayor's report and council member reports. These are opportunities where myself or the council gives some information to the community, talks about goings-on in the community, other entities that they're engaged with. We're going to do this, we're going to get through this, and we're going to take a little break, and we'll be reconvening in our committee room. So the mayor's report, I do have something tonight, and I wrote something out, so bear with me. As you know, I regularly encourage conversations in this chamber that focus on issues within the scope of village governance. By and large, this council works to do that as well. Yet there have been times when subjects beyond our border arise which warrant more. The murder of George Floyd, for example, despite local policing efforts that were way ahead of the curve and Mr. Floyd being murdered in another city in another state, we chose to make our feelings, expectations, and intents known. On October 7th, the terrorist group Hamas carried out an unprecedented surprise attack on the Jewish state of Israel. This, I believe, is one of those times. In a premeditated and provocative act of war, Hamas terrorists invaded cities and towns across all of Israel, killing over 1,400 people, including 24 Americans, and wounding thousands more. Hamas has kidnapped hundreds of children, women, and men and taken them as hostages in Gaza and fired thousands of rockets and missiles at cities all across the country of Israel. The village of Downers Grove is outraged by, mourns deeply for, and unequivocally condemns the horrific terrorist actions of Hamas. We want to add our voices to make clear these actions have no justification and no legitimacy and must be universally condemned. We send our condolences to the families of those murdered and wish for full and speedy recovery of those wounded and for the prompt return of those taken hostage. Recognizing and supporting the aspirations of the Palestinian people for self-governance, peace, dignity, and prosperity, as all Americans should do, does not require the acceptance of the brutality and savagery exhibited by Hamas. Let us be clear, terrorists such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and others do not represent the aspirations of any human being that believes all men are created equal, that believes they are endowed with their Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or that seeks peace and justice in our world. These and other terrorist organizations, whether at home or abroad, offer nothing to any people anywhere other than misery, horror, and bloodshed. Israel has every right to defend itself against acts of war and terrorism. Downers Grove stands united with Israel and joins in the hope for peace throughout the Middle East. And importantly, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up tonight is because right here at home, I wanted to take this time to remind our residents, businesses, and guests that discrimination based on history, gender, age, disability, race, religion, sexuality, or social economic status is antithetical to the values of our nation, our state, and our village, and is not welcome in Downers Grove. With that, council member reports. Mike, let's start with you.
In the interest of time, no report, Mayor.
Danny?
I have no report, Mayor. Thank you.
Leslie?
Thank you. Just real quick, I wanted to give a shout out to Equality Downers Grove and the Downers Grove Public Library for supporting LGBTQ plus youth through traumatic experiences. It was an incredibly sobering and difficult conversation, but a really important one for those of us who are part of the community and community leaders, how to engage folks who may have experienced various forms of trauma and how we can best support our community members through those times. So a big thank you to them. I learned a lot, and hopefully there will be follow-ups. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, a few things, Mayor. The 100 Women Who Care are having their first of 4 donation events for the year. This is a group that supports 4 local charities a year by pooling donations from members and then selecting a charity each quarter to support. The meeting will be Wednesday, November 1st at 7 p.m. at Neat Restaurant in Westmont. You are welcome to bring a charity to nominate, bring a friend, and bring your checkbook. All are welcome. If you'd like to nominate a charity, they need to be a 501c3 that benefits Downers Grove or a nearby community. You should also be prepared to give a short elevator speech about the charity. Also, it's cash bar. Also, the EDC is sponsoring what they're calling a Spark event. So over the past 10 months, the Economic Development Corporation has heard about the struggles to secure financing for small and medium businesses. This is their first Spark event. They're bringing together 4 of our banking partners to speak to small and medium-sized businesses about programs available to help you stay and grow here in Downers Grove. They'll be discussing special lending programs for women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses, commercial lending lines of credit, operating expense accounts, energy efficiency improvements, and so on. They're expecting a lively roundtable discussion and have plenty of time for Q&A. So this event will be Thursday, October 19th at 9 a.m. at the Belmont Golf Club, and they will be serving a continental breakfast. And finally, I greatly appreciate the mayor's comments regarding the tragedies that have occurred in the Middle East, especially the loss of innocent lives. Our nearby neighbors in Plainfield are dealing with the reverberations of this conflict with an unspeakable tragedy and a hate crime that took the life of a 6-year-old innocent boy. My heart aches for this child and his family and the community that has to come to terms with this tragic event. I can only hope we see peace abroad soon and peace at home as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank you for your words during the mayor report, and a sentiment that I know I personally share. And I too want to underscore that hatred, violence, discrimination against anyone on the basis of religion, race, gender, whatever it might be, is unacceptable and unwelcome here in Downers Grove. We've seen rising anti-Semitism, rising anti-Muslim violence. It's too much of an affliction in our world, and it's come too close to home. So, thank you, Mayor.
All right, with that, we're going to take a short break. It is getting a little late, but we're going to continue. So in about 5 minutes or so, we will be in the committee room. We're going to take up the subject of some Fairview long-range planning, and we'll see you all there. Fairview area implementation. It is late, but we do want to continue to make progress. So Dave and team are going to go through some of the initial sort of setup, as they normally do. And then I think we should all, if we've got some comments we want to get people started thinking on. You know, what I guess I'm thinking is we're not going to do a lot of debating tonight, but we ought to hear from everybody. Let's start making some progress, give each other something to think about in the interim, and then we'll ask for some input as well. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Dave and team is
Dave and
Stan
team.
Popovich, Community Development Director.
Thank you, Manager Fields. Good evening again, Mayor, Council, and residents. As the Mayor noted, we're going to be talking about the Fairview area implementation tonight. A little background on boundaries and land use recommendation reviews. So the Village Council set up a long-range plan, 18 priority action items to be completed in the next 20-month period through May of 2025. This includes a comprehensive plan update and these related action items. Included is the Fairview area plan implementation that we'll be talking about tonight. The Fairview focus area plan implementation includes the Village Council identified these areas, defining the project area, amendments, potential amendments to the zoning ordinance, zoning map, financing and financial policies, business attraction, streetscape, and some redevelopment. This evening, we're going to be talking about the first two items on the list here, defining the project area, and then clarifying and confirming land use recommendations from the 2017 comprehensive plan, which could lead to text amendments and zoning ordinance map amendments. Because these two topics are related, we'll be talking about these two items tonight. After my presentation, we can go into a little bit of council discussion and resident discussion as well. When we talk about plan implementation, we start off with the comprehensive plan. That was completed in 2017. It included public input, plan commission review and recommendation of the comprehensive plan, and then ultimately Village Council approval in 2017. The next step in this process would be to develop a zoning framework. This would be similar to what we did in the downtown a few years ago after the comp plan was approved. This would be completed by the Village Council throughout the end of this year. And after that, staff could proceed with then zoning ordinance text amendments and map amendments as identified in the zoning framework. This would involve neighborhood meetings, again, plan commission review and recommendation, and ultimately Village Council approval. So tonight, what we wanted to start talking about was some policy direction using the existing comprehensive plan land use recommendations to start as a guide here. Tonight, we're looking to talk about establishing boundaries, confirming those land use recommendations, looking to have some information brought up so through these discussions the next couple of weeks, staff would have enough information to begin working on a zoning framework that can be reviewed by the council in the near future. Alternatively, these recommendations were developed in 17. Obviously, a lot has changed in the world. If council believes that they don't agree with the recommendations for 2017, the village can begin anew and relook at the Fairview focus area as part of our comprehensive plan update that we're going to be beginning soon. So in the packet tonight, we included an excerpt, the 6 pages of the Fairview focus area. You can see it includes mapping, it includes key concepts, texts. It includes a map here in the middle about catalyst sites. The comp plan, for those that aren't familiar, identifies catalyst sites as those parcels where a redevelopment would have a positive catalytic impact on the surrounding areas. Catalyst sites are throughout the comprehensive plan in each of the 7 focus areas within the comprehensive plan itself. When we talk about boundaries in the comprehensive plan uses words to describe the boundaries of the comprehensive in the focus area. It includes a lot of different maps and text in there, but it's principally a text description of the boundary. And so on the north, it talks about Hummer Park to the north. On the east, the boundaries of that is the village limits. And on the south are the residential neighborhoods and along the west as well. But it doesn't really define an actual boundary by streets. It's more of a descriptive way to define boundaries. What staff has looked at to try to define better boundaries and propose a boundary tonight is this is the catalytic the catalytic map here that talks about the catalyst sites here. And this one seems to encompass a lot of the Fairview focus area through these. So staff used this map to develop these proposed and potential boundaries here using the catalyst site here. So Again, we're sort of talking about Hummer Park to the north along Fairview, extending out to the village boundaries, to the railroad tracks and down towards 2nd Street. A little further south to include some of the multifamily zoning that's already in on Fairview, and then out to the east, out to the west, my apologies, that way. So we've used the catalytic site map to see these boundaries and set these boundaries up, because we think that's a pretty good representation of what the comp plan might be trying to accomplish in 17. Later, there'll be an opportunity for us to talk about this map and get council ideas on this map, and if we should move boundaries or if we think those boundaries are good. Switching gears, talking about the land use comments that were in the comprehensive plan. Again, these are the land use recommendations. They talk about a mix of uses. We've got a map here on the boards and also been handed out to the folks that are here with us tonight. You can see a lot of different uses here: industrial, commercial, residential, and then obviously the metro station and Pepperidge Farm out there as well. The comprehensive plan notes that the existing land uses are appropriate. Development, as we all know, has occurred in piecemeal fashion over time. Many buildings are dated. They have different heights, different densities. They failed to potentially maximize the potential given to the train station, the proximity of the train station. The 2017 comprehensive plan recommendations are really based on a transit-oriented development type of redevelopment in this area, which is based on a highly functioning and busy commuter rail station. And those are the 2017 recommendations. When we look at this area on a map about the land uses here, we see a central commercial area centered really around Fairview and the railroad tracks. It extends both north of the railroad tracks and south of the railroad tracks. We see significant industrial areas here moving west on Rogers Street between Fairview and Prospect, and then again north of the tracks there. And then we see on 2nd Street south of the railroad tracks extending east of Fairview over all the way to Williams Street. And then surrounding this area, we have a Westmont border along Cumnor there, and then around the south, the east, and the north here are all single-family, multifamily, duplex residential uses. When we look at the different types of businesses and land uses in here, it's a wide range from animal boarding, auto repair. We have the train station, a gas station, offices, restaurants, warehouse. So really a big mix of uses that we see in this area, as identified not only on this map, but on the map in front of you. Staff put together this map just to better sort of understand what's going on. We've identified the proposed boundary on the red dash here, but also wanted to expand this out a little bit for discussion purposes if the council decides they want to move some boundaries around, so we can talk about those land uses. Again, we see multifamily housing, offices, animal, contractor shops, restaurants, self-storage facilities, a variety of uses. Residential, commercial, industrial. This is really a soup of mixes in this area here that we see. I don't think that's a zoning term, soup of mixes. I'll use it anyways. So we really, again, going back to the comprehensive plan recommendations, a lot of these recommendations read similar to characteristics of the downtown that we see. A redevelopment oriented towards the street, parking in the rear, promote neighborhood commercial uses, encourage mixed-use, transit-oriented development. One of the key things that we saw both in the downtown and here is provide a connection between the downtown and the Fairview focus area. The comprehensive plan notes that existing land uses are appropriate, but we should look to update and enhance the built form and better coordination through uses. And it does note in the same breath that we should communicate with the existing industrial users regarding future needs and potential desire to relocate, and that some of the industrial uses along Rogers presents an opportunity to redevelop with more compatible uses. So on one hand, the comp plan says the uses are appropriate, on the other hand, it says potentially more compatible uses. So the question that we want to start talking about tonight is really this sort of an or question is, on the one hand, land uses are appropriate. On the other hand, we should talk to the industrial users and see if they want to relocate potentially, or present an opportunity for redevelopment with more compatible uses. It also should be noted that there's automobile uses in this corridor as well, the gas station, and the auto repair shop. Auto-related uses need to be taken into consideration and should be discussed as it relates to these sort of recommendations. If the desired direction is to go to make Fairview more of a downtown area, similar to our downtown, land use policies have been put into place over time, which has seen auto-related and auto-oriented land uses leaving the downtown over a period of time. So two of these big clarifications that we're looking to hope start conversations tonight about are, do we want to see the industrial uses in this area in the future? Do we want to see auto-related uses in this area in the future? And what uses does council want to see or the community want to see in this focus area moving forward? That concludes my presentation for this evening. I was ready with this map here, Mayor, to start talking about boundaries, and we can start with that. And Manager Fieldman was going to take some notes on the board for us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So it's an open discussion, and it's not going to finish a single thing tonight, but we need to start having the conversation. So I'd be, I think maybe just anybody wants to start and jump in. I think probably one of the first questions has to do with the comp plan's definition of the uses and acceptable uses. Does anybody want to see any changes to that? I'd encourage everybody to remember this is a little bit of an exercise in blue sky, right?
Well, a little more specific, we're looking for clarifications. Does the council think the concept of existing uses as you see them on the map are appropriate? So as we go to the framework, we write the framework to encourage those to stay for long periods? Or do we think it's really this concept of, maybe some of these industrial uses aren't the long-term future and these concepts? So we're looking for that as well.
Or are there uses that we think we wish we wanted to encourage that aren't happening now? That's another possible bullet over there. So, anybody want to start in? Greg, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would go down the road of existing uses are not appropriate. I'd love to communicate with some of these industrial users and see if we can put them to another location in our village. And thinking about other uses, I think we've got real opportunities here to not just reshape this area, but also create a greater connection to downtown as well, which is why I'm thrilled to see the more expansive definition of the Fairview area. And I'd like to see, whether it's more multifamily or more single-family attached. I think you could go either direction along Rogers on the south end. And I think you could see probably a mix of that as you're south of the tracks there to the east of Fairview, sort of that blue area. I think we've got real opportunities here, and I'd like to see us take advantage of them rather than continue to lock in what we've got.
Any uses that come to mind that you wish we had that we don't have?
If you give me a couple of minutes, I could probably come up with 20 or 30, but...
All right. Fair enough.
No, I'm trying to keep it broad strokes for now.
And you feel like you kind of like the map that's sitting up here?
Yeah, I mean, I might tweak it here and there, maybe grab a parcel here, grab a parcel there, but I'm happy to hear any of my colleagues on any of that, but by and large, yeah, I like thinking big.
Danny?
Yeah, I agree with Greg. I think that if the goal is to create a connection between the downtown area and the Fairview area, that the industrial use along Rogers and eventually Second, I believe, is not appropriate. And I also agree with extending it a little bit to the north. I think that's what you were saying on Rogers, to create an opportunity for like a buffer area between the single-family homes. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I think we could go in that direction, absolutely. I was thinking you could also tweak it a little bit on the east end, maybe a little bit on the south, but I'm not going to quibble necessarily over one or two parcels, but the bigger the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree.
Just to follow up on yours, Greg. Sorry, Danny. Extend boundaries. Danny had said extend boundaries to the north.
Of Rogers.
North of Rogers, got it. Hey, Greg, extend boundaries.
Yeah, on the eastern edge, I might bring that down to the southern end of, I'm blanking on exactly what street that is. Yeah, where
Second Street?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
And then there might be another parcel or two on the east end of Fairview that I would grab. I'm thinking particularly the one basically in that corner right there.
Right here?
Yep.
All right.
So southeast corner of Second Fairview? And then when Commissioner, when you were talking about north side of Rogers, so are we trying to capture this, sort of this multifamily zoning that's in that area right now?
Yeah,
Is
I
that what
believe,
you're talking about?
yeah, so is most of it, I know there's a lot mixed in there, but then there's some single-family houses, they're labeled on here as in the C.
Anywhere you see brown, that's multifamily.
That's multifamily, okay, so you can do attached, okay.
Yeah, it's multifamily zoning.
Okay.
And there's a mix of single family based on the map.
Yeah, that's why we want to make sure
Yeah.
we're working off of not the zoning so much, but these land uses.
Existing uses.
So if I can,
You good with?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other spots you would draw lines differently? Okay. Or not?
No, I would agree
Not
with
drawing
Greg.
tonight,
I mean, I
so-
would agree with Greg on the east end of Second Street over there.
Over this area?
Yeah.
Mike?
yeah, I was just, I would just default to anything that's currently brown, that's zoned, multifamily right now, that would be something that we would include in this. So just as a starting point, right? And I'd definitely be interested in some conversation about some of the current single-family adjacencies. Certainly along Second Street there, but probably definitely north of Third and west of Florence. Just, yeah. So I have to think. I can't really come to a. We're thinking loose right now, right?
Yeah.
So
I could see where we could have some conversation where some of these areas that are currently zoned single-family would even be somehow thought about in this focus area.
But Mike, you were okay with bumping that line up to the half
Yeah,
block?
that's,
Yep.
grab that multifamily, grab the multifamily north of Burlington
Here.
Avenue, grab the multifamily east of Blodgett, south of Burlington,
Here?
right
This
there.
over there?
Yep, yep. Mhm.
Oh,
Yep.
interesting.
Yep. Yeah. In terms of the focus area land use recommendations, I was confused by that, and I know we had conversation, confused by the existing uses are appropriate language in the comp plan. I'm not quite sure what they were, did anybody else really grasp what they were trying to?
I just assumed they were trying not to offend the existing users.
That's the only thing I could think
That's
of. And I
where I felt as well.
I get it, but what we're really talking about is the or. Absolutely, the highest and best uses of those industrial properties is not how they're being used right now. And what a tremendous opportunity. The connection, as Commissioner Jose mentioned, to the downtown is I almost think it's just essential to really making this a success. So those visual cues that we're hopefully going to get through pedestrian right of way and as was mentioned in the comp language. Also, well, I don't want to. I'm going to go off track, so I'm not going to do that. That's what I was asked to talk to. That's what that's it. So, no automobile-oriented uses. I'm a no on that. I really think our current downtown and what we're doing there serves as a great model of success for how we can work this.
Yeah. I am in agreement with Commissioner Davenport in terms of the, including some of those multifamily areas as well. And I also agree that I'm not interested in keeping existing uses as appropriate. I think we have a much better opportunity, especially because this is such a heavily transit-oriented area. Again, as somebody who lives off of Fairview and who now never uses the Fairview train station anymore because Metro has reduced service so much, is it a chicken or the egg? I don't know. Is it because not as many people were using Fairview? Is it because, they're just trying to reduce service? We're probably not going to get a great answer on that one, but it certainly doesn't help that, we don't have a lot of destinations along Fairview. So I am much more in favor of, again, that connection to downtown that we talked about. and potentially getting more, whether it be retail, commercial, service-type industries that, you know, we would be wanting to attract more in our downtown and kind of move it that way in Fairview. You know, we have some great industrial areas, and, you know, we certainly have some, I'm sure, some occupancy in some of those. And I don't know that butting up right against a really major commuter rail is, you know, and two, against a lot of these single-family and multifamily units is the best use. You know, a lot of folks, again, probably moved into some of these because, let's face it, living off of the Fairview area is cheaper than living off of the Main Street area. That's one reason that I live off of the Fairview area, not the Main Street area. And so, you know, really having that access to transit and having access to, you know, a workplace would be a huge benefit to a lot of these multifamily units, a more affordable entry point. And so if we can do anything to kind of boost the use of the Fairview station and that economy in that area, I think it would be a huge benefit to all of our residents.
Leslie, you were talking about a list of usage, retail, services, centers. Does that also include in your mind restaurants, brew pubs, and those types of facilities?
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, I think generally agree. I think extending it into some of the multifamily parcels makes sense. Is Prospect far enough east to connect to downtown? Do we feel that's far enough east?
So Stan, correct me, when you get to Prospect, doesn't that start the downtown transition?
I believe so. I believe DT starts right there because the last parcel is downtown transition right here. And then we move right into downtown transition and then downtown business right there.
I just want to make sure if we're going as far as Prospect that we're actually going to connect to that next place that we want to. We talked about downtown, and if that's zoned for transitional, then that's good enough for me.
So that's a compatibility when you go from whatever we end up deciding what the zoning name is to the concepts in the DT.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. I think I'm struggling a little bit. I think I'd like to see some of the things that are here, restaurants, and the idea of, you know, in my mind, that idea of having be a little more, little different than downtown in terms of like entertainment. I know we've talked in the past, there was like a theater troupe that was looking to get in there. And to me, I view it just a little differently that way. I wouldn't want to emulate downtown. I would want to make it sort of its own thing. So I don't know if we're getting to that discussion now or not, but I assume we will. But what does the Fairview area mean to us in terms of like, when you get there, what does it feel like? What does it have? What's the vibrancy? That type of stuff, I think.
I think as it's contemplated now, there is this idea of a wider use of mixes.
Okay.
Right? So, wider than downtown. But as we go, we'd love to hear your opinion too.
Yeah.
Is it so wide that it captures existing industrial uses?
Yeah, I agree with everyone so far. I don't think the existing uses, some are, but generally there are some there that are not appropriate. And I think I would, the latter of communicate with existing users and look for ways to redevelop that.
Right, gotcha on that category.
I'll go back to what you probably hear me. I feel like there's a vision that we need to work backwards from before we start reaching out to.
Yes.
Right? Like, I want to see it, and then we can kind of work back there. But I'm sure that's coming.
Can I,
and no auto. No auto.
Clarification?
Yeah, you can put me down on no auto.
Yeah, same.
I think we've got a few on Ogden that.
I just wanted to I agree with everything you've just said, and my suggestion is using our downtown as a model wasn't that I was
Yeah.
hoping to duplicate it.
Right.
In fact, I mean, part of the energy around this, I think about maybe some of what's been done over in Seven Bridges and what you see, near and around vibrant college campuses and just, really interesting eclectic mixes of uses and multi-use applications. So it's really exciting, and nailing down that vision, I think, is important.
Multi-uses within buildings and multi-uses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good?
Yes, thank you.
All right, my turn to jump in. On this boundary thing, I don't disagree with anything that's been said, except I think I would add that maybe I wasn't hearing it right, but I wouldn't limit any of this to multifamily. So, for instance, along Second Street, I'd pick up those single-family, or whatever those are.
Yeah, we have a couple of people
This way.
say that, right?
I'm on that too.
You know, on
Everybody?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
on Rogers, I'd pick up the whole north side, all the way
Yeah.
down to Prospect.
Yeah.
Yep.
The dark brown and
Yeah.
light brown there?
Mhm.
Okay.
So mid-block, right?
Yeah, right.
North side of Rogers, and then everybody said this too, all the way down, you finish this block
That
out?
was the block?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And then I think I'd do a similar thing on Burlington.
With these,
I think I'd try and square some stuff off, so I don't know if you pick up that alley and go east. But we're trying to create an environment that we think, this is, if you had, this is,
It's okay.
yeah,
that way and this way?
the next one up, next alley up.
Right here?
Yeah. One of the challenges we always have is how big of spaces are out there. We're not going to necessarily be putting the spaces together, but telling the world that's the picture we have, I think is okay. Same thing on Maple. Right now, there's that little corner right there, Stan.
Right here?
Yeah, pick that up as well.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna write down a general expansion in the northeast quadrant, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'd take, what is that street that's covered, not Florence, next one west?
This one is Wilcox.
Yeah, I'd take Wilcox all the way up to Maple,
Okay.
and then I'd go down and pick up that brown triangle, or trapezoid.
Right
there.
here?
Yeah,
Okay.
Just the point being that this is going to lead to visions, as Chris was talking about. It may lead to public decisions about infrastructure and investments and financing tools and things like that, and I want to have bigger spaces available. We know from our experience downtown, where the village bought a bunch of property and put it together. We know from our experience along Ogden Avenue that lot sizes can be a real challenge. What property is the village on right now?
So I think we go to land use, so we go to X, which is the
Yeah, train station.
train station parking lot,
Yep.
which wraps around here. That's right away. A lot of this in the right of way here is all, I believe it's all BNSF right away.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanna jump in there. A
Sorry,
lot
could
of
you show
folks-
that again? What?
So the village owns this parcel here, which is the Fairview train station,
on
which is
their
marked
X.
X.
Yep, mhm,
X over there, and then parcels here.
yep.
But a lot of this in the middle where it's not parceled is railroad right away.
That's actually railroad right away.
Right,
Yeah.
and a lot of people make the leap that it's gotta be village-owned and village-controlled because we have parking on it. But it is actually not. We have parking agreements on a lot of
Guilty.
these.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so it's not village-owned and controlled. We do have a good history of working with the BNSF, and they're the underlying landowners, but that is not in our direct control. We'd have to engage with them if we were to start talking about what to put on there, what to do it, and they would ultimately be up to them.
Ask a question.
I'm going to make our staff cringe first. Dave talks about our good working relationship. I suppose at some level we do. I'll just remind everybody about trees, and then we can talk about things like fencing at crossings, talk about shelters that got half-assed done. There's challenges there. There's a service level threshold that they have expectations on that likely doesn't meet ours. So just know that's a tough
Okay.
gap to overcome. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to ask if anyone had any feelings about those extra large lots along Grand Avenue.
In this area down here.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that's all single-family housing right now, down through here on both sides of Grand. And then this is a larger multifamily
Right.
complex here, and a couple of smaller multifamily at that location there.
I'm just looking at, in terms of opportunity, when I was looking at this the other day, those are large parcels. So obviously, more can be done with those than in the future, if somebody were to so choose to do so.
I want to go back to the village-owned property. The reason I asked that question is because, and this is probably beyond tonight's scope, but we talk about what we think we might want to have for uses. I agree with everybody's opinions on the uses as it's put on this board. But if you're trying to encourage other uses, you may have to have, I'm going to just use the term infrastructure. So, for instance, if you said you wanted to create some sort of a performance environment, I think people have tossed that around in casual conversations. Village parking deck is pretty supportive of that, right? People lost their minds at one time when we started talking parking deck. So but it's these kinds of conversations that we need to have, and I'll remind everybody too that when we were sitting here drawing this map with a magic wand, but when the village did this downtown, which I think, first of all, everybody that's moved into town in the last 20 years has experienced just that, and probably had played a role in them making that choice. But beyond that, I think most people, but for some occasional complaints about parking, are generally like, what's going on? But the village bought property, assembled property, and then, at least in theory, undersold property to help facilitate that. So as we draw maps and talk about uses and look at things, just remember it's more than just sort of what do we theoretically want to consider an area right this moment, right? There's potential choices we would make driven by these decisions about uses or goals or boundaries that would have radical impacts, way beyond us just kind of daydreaming here. The uses, Enza, help me. I'm getting old. When we went through downtown and we did a bunch of rezoning, it might not even been with that. It might have been in a rewrite. But we went through and changed and added and expanded some use definitions. There were things like artisan manufacturing. I don't remember what it was, right?
That was the 17.
17.
Is that 17?
Yep.
Might be forgiven for not remembering all the details. Right now, are those tied to DT and DB definitions?
Yes.
Okay.
They are allowed in those zoning districts.
Okay. So, as it relates to this conversation, I want to be thoughtful about the use of the word industrial. That's all I'm saying. I don't think we want what the classic definition of industrial is, but I suspect there are manufacturing-ish things that we probably do want.
Yeah, that's a reasonable point. I think that's, I'm thinking Goldfinger, things like that fit because of its quasi-industrial. And that's exactly the kind of thing I'd like to see stay and grow and multiply.
Okay. Artisan industrial, okay. Small scale maker spaces, okay.
Yes.
Heavy industrial, not so much.
No.
Right.
Over here.
Right.
So Bob, I'll put you
Great clarification.
this way.
Yeah, and like one of the uses on here is warehousing. I don't have any interest in that
Right.
as a related
When I
example.
say self-storage and warehousing and stuff
Yeah.
too, that's kind of, we think of those as industrial-ish.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Okay.
That's why I brought it up, because that's a fuzzy word. You know? Other thoughts? Part of this exercise is we get to hear each other talk and then think about it for a while. Right? What other information are you hoping to get out of us tonight?
I think we heard from everybody, perhaps on, maybe not everybody on the auto related, but we got a lot of.
Put me as a no.
Dan, Jason?
I think we have a lot that we think some of the existing uses are appropriate. But then some of the, like, to the last point, some of the more industrial, heavy manufacturing industry uses might not be appropriate in that area. Looking to emulate, I understand looking to emulate downtown, but maybe not copy downtown. Maybe have a more, I think maybe you said more of a, I don't know, if it was a university or more vibrancy, a different type of vibe in that area than downtown maybe,
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I think I've got, I think what I've got, and I think I've heard a lot of, on the automobile uses, I think we're pretty clear on that one so far, so.
I think we got some work to do on the boundaries to come back to you next time. And I think we can sort of put together an interpretation of sort of a modified 2017 comp plan recommendations based on what we're hearing. So maybe we can get that for you next time with a little more clarity, sort of not go all the way back to the drawing board, but just perhaps what we heard tonight in terms of land use recommendations, and come back with some adjusted boundaries for council review.
So this process is continuing and ongoing and a lot longer than one more meeting, right? Just so we're all clear on that.
Yeah, I guess maybe just when we'll get the opportunity to discuss what the vision looks like. I don't know if that's something that I would like to make sure we have an opportunity sooner rather than later to have a discussion like this about ideas that we have or comparables. You mentioned sort of the university feel, but I feel like we need to get a little more, some examples or specific around that. And as, you know, maybe we talk to even folks like the EDC and what kinds of things are spurring economic growth and value and
sure
that type of thing. I feel we can, this is just my brain, we can list a bunch of uses, but I feel like we want to have a little more guidance around which ones we maybe want more than others, right? And then I guess maybe a question, based on that, would we not then peel off some uses that like we're trying to funnel certain businesses or attractions, so then wouldn't we then go back and say, okay, well, and I'm not going to pick one, but this type of use doesn't really fit, so while it at one time did, we're just, industrial is an obvious one to me, but there may be ones that are like, well, we'd rather this than that, so we have to make decisions around that.
So the good news is what we're hearing here is now that the transition from sort of just this to that's the zoning framework. That's exactly where we're going next. When Stan said we'll go to zoning framework. So it's not jumping right to an ordinance. And detail.
Got it.
Vision, kind of what, categories fit, kind of, so I think that's where we're headed, Chris.
Okay.
I think
Chris,
it
there's
would,
something interesting there, EDC input?
Yes.
Yeah.
it would be helpful to me, maybe, I don't know if this was helpful to everybody, but I would love it if you have, any of us has a vision, right? Write a little narrative.
Yeah.
Shoot it over to Enzo, and let's package it up and let's hear it, because those are, you start typing and you leave it alone for a while, and you come back a couple days later, but I would get a lot of value out of that would help the next meeting, I think.
And a good place to start is read the opening paragraphs of the current comp plan, because that's sort of, I think, what Chris saying vision statement, that's, I think let's mark that up if you think it's not quite off.
Yeah.
Little homework like that would benefit all of us, and we can just funnel it through Enzo. We have some folks that were real troopers tonight, so let's hear from them.
Well, right now I feel like I'm in the middle of a big board game. Is most of this property already in use? How much of this is residential? I mean, is there some guy sitting at home watching TV tonight, not knowing his home is not in your vision?
Possibly. Yep.
Just how do you folks intend to, are you going to knock on doors and say we want your property and you got to go? Seriously?
No, it's a way slower, longer. This is not a fiat kind of thing.
If this was all open land and ready, I'm all for it. Sure, I'd love to see another part, as long as we don't have another Ogden Avenue included in here. But I'm thinking, these are all people who have built their businesses, their homes, and you're all talking like it's like, well, I'll put this here, and I'll put this here, and I'll trade you this for that. My advice to these people would get a lawyer. Because frankly, what you're talking about.
This is exactly what the exercise is looking at what might you think, if you had a blank slate of paper, what might this look like 25 years from now?
Okay, because I would say you're gonna have some pipes on your hands.
It could well be. There were some downtown as well.
Yeah.
There were challenges and interactions that weren't super pleasant back in '98. There were similar ones when we rezoned in '17.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this, if it's industrial, it's not pretty, and I mean, it could be reused, but it's almost like we're getting very flippant about, well, we'll take this, and we need this, and let's turn this into that and that. I thought, I would really fight you on that.
Are you familiar with the future land use map?
No.
Spend a little time with that. What we also do as part of our planning process is we develop what's called a future land use map. And it is a very similar exercise. It says, what might you wish was going on in this parcel and that parcel? It doesn't compel the village to try and force somebody into something different.
So we're not planning on any dominant, we call it,
eminent domain? It's a million miles from now.
I hope so, because if I were any of these people, I would not be happy with it. If you gave me a good price for my property, I could be out in a week. But no, I'm just curious. If it was all blank, I'd say go for it. No, let's start tomorrow.
Well, that's the question.
Yeah. But we're talking about people here, and their properties. Yep. And it's just, absolutely, we can't be that light about it, but no, I think that's wrong. You asked me.
Yep, that's what we want.
So just to be clear from the staff perspective, this is a zoning exercise that we're on the front end. A lot of the other stuff we're talking about is in the other categories of this project, which is facilitation and financial policies and that kind of stuff. So start with the zoning, and then usually it takes a while to get to those other approaches.
So I've got a Miles Boone. I've got so I own a building on Fairview. How real is this? If it's an exercise, how, should I put money into my building, or should I just hunker down and get the duct tape out and keep it until you guys are we're tearing this down?
We're not tearing anything down. This project, what we're doing right now is very much what was done downtown, which back in, help me with the dates, mid-90s?
2017.
Well, that was a rezoning, but
Mid-90s, right?
Mid-90s.
97, 98.
97, 98. A bunch of people did this exact same exercise, and you might remember what downtown looked like then.
Sure. And things got torn down.
Yeah, but a village didn't just come in and start knocking stuff down. It was an evolutionary process, some of which was done by people doing it on their own, some of which was done by the village purchasing stuff. There was a whole row of things over the better part of 15 years that caused that. There's nothing about this should direct any particular existing landowner to make choices. This is the village council thinking, what do we wish, if everything was on the table, this would look like in 20 years.
Okay.
That's the kind of exercise.
Okay. And then, because in 2017, we had just bought the building, and then I was in this very room with renderings of what my block would look like.
Sure.
There's somewhere around here, right?
Sure.
From the comp plan?
And so that's a very different, that was what they wished, and now all of a sudden we're back to it. Is that still something that you wish would happen there? Is that what that's saying? Is that what we're kind of
We're asking that question, all right?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing, is asking that question. But I'll remind everybody, back in downtown, there were a couple of such plans. If you go through this exercise, then you have to think about, okay, what does that look like? Right?
Sure.
We sit here and we draw lines and we talk about uses, and what might that look like? And so Lakota, I think was the name of the big one that hung around here for a while. And that's exactly what it was. It was renderings, it was streetscapes, it was what might this look like.
Right.
That isn't exactly what happened. It's not ever going to be.
Okay.
But it would be a logical next step if we thought we all had some clarity on direction, and probably we'd be hoping for.
And getting
yes.
your vision and all
exactly.
that, if that fit, then yeah.
Right.
And then we get into zoning and how do we make that happen. So we're a ways off for any real change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I also just add that the comprehensive plan was visionary, but there was not a lot of action behind it as we see. This council has said, this is an important part of what we want to see. We talked about extension of downtown. Let's get to what the vision is. And so they've already said this is very early on, but I think this is the first step in like trying to enact some of that rather than wishing it, right? And no disrespect to the comp plan, it was well thought out. I think they had still have some good ideas, but.
It was very broad in scope.
Broad in scope, right? And I think we're trying to see if we can narrow it down and.
And these are some things you're picking out
Yeah,
of that, and like,
exactly,
let's
yeah.
try to make this happen.
And I'm not just saying this because he's in the room. I think Goldfinger has been a catalyst to that. Planted right in the middle between downtown and Fairview, and I think has given some of us an idea of what more we want. So I think that's important to recognize.
Does that help, Miles?
What's that?
Does that help?
Yeah, it helps a lot.
Good.
Yeah, I just want, I mean, you're talking about, like I said, again, having maybe or creating another downtown or a supplement to that, you know, in the future. But then you're going to end up with we're really limited where we are now, our core, let's face it. I mean, we're pretty well built out and, you know, traffic's stacking up in every direction. But if you end up here, then you're going to end up with 2 downtowns, wouldn't you? Which town would you want to go to, 1 or 2? I don't know. Would that impact our original one as far as draw business away from it? Depending what you put in there. But to have them so far apart, I'm trying to think of other towns that maybe have something similar to that, and I can't really think of one.
LaGrange might be one. LaGrange would probably be a good one.
Is it? Yeah, I'm not really familiar with it.
Right, Stone Avenue versus LaGrange Road.
Yeah, well, for one, somebody mentioned, well, wider, boy, amen to that. If it ever comes to that, make that Main Street no wider. Yeah, and again, like I said, we don't need another Ogden Avenue and 47 car dealers.
Right.
So, make a note in the future. So, well,
Can I say, I own several properties on this, and the one thing that just concerned me a little bit is this larger and exaggerated setbacks, you know, which was basically my property. And it does worry me when I had the similar thing happen with the downtown transition where all my property got set back and subject to different zoning. And I would like to, you know, especially that piece on Fairview, because I own from the Speedway to the railroad tracks. I'm all for, you know, being part of a plan, but that does limit a lot of what you can do with that property. And then the other part too, which I think Leslie alluded to, which is I used to go downtown and you know, certainly Fairview is not, from a commuter standpoint, you don't go there because the schedule doesn't go there, and the downtown commuting is not what it used to be, and it's a whole different feel. And if I were Metro, that might be one that I would abandon in favor of, you know, Belmont, which you can park up, you know, and in Maine. So I would just be cautious too, because I have operated a lot of businesses in downtown, Grange, Elmhurst, Oak Park, and all sorts, but when you get these tertiary downtowns, the traffic counts are light and are tough to tenant because you don't get the activity that you want the activity, but if you don't have the activity, it's hard to gain that. And I understand that's why you have a comprehensive plan and you move forward with that, but you just got to be a little bit careful, because you can go a block in some downtowns and it just changes the whole dynamic of who you can attract from a business, and it's like the A tenants and then the B tenants, and it's just something to consider. But my biggest thing, just in zoning, would be in the first thing is I would hate to be subject to a big setback. And
Can we just hear Stan talk a little bit about that? What the comp plan vision is for that currently?
Yeah, so the comp plan vision really talks about, you know, orienting things towards the street, mixed-use transit-oriented development. And if we're using sort of downtown as a guide, if this were to become a district, we're on Fairview and a connection to downtown, then maybe it does have more buildings right at property lines. It might be more of that, especially on Fairview, where we're going to bring it closer, on-street parking, more of a walkable area that way. And then as we transition out, maybe that becomes a little bit less. But I think right in that core area, we're talking about trying to keep buildings pretty close to the street right away.
So less of a required.
Less of a required setback, yeah.
Not more.
Yeah, but, I mean, this says exaggerated setbacks. Right on my property, there's a big arrow there. And
Gotcha.
And it says, yes, larger and exaggerated setbacks.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you
why
for that.
I got a little excited.
Got it.
Yeah.
Fair.
And on that plan too, in the comp plan, I think they had everything redeveloped.
Okay.
And it was more of a blank slate on the piece of land, what could potentially happen out there.
But that's exactly, Chris, that's exactly why we want you to be part of these conversations.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody that what is going to come out of this is going to be exactly what they want, right? But the process is going to take us down that road of having those conversations about, do we want stuff on the street or off the street? And what's that really mean for parking? What's that really mean for existing uses? What's that really mean for future uses? So that kind of input is important to this conversation. Don't leave it.
Yeah.
Robin?
A question and then a comment. Can you explain where Whittier School is in relation to this?
Right about here.
Okay.
It's
so
just right in that area.
Right there.
A little bit close, but not adjacent.
It's between Hill and Blodgett on
Yeah.
right there.
Okay.
Green Lodge on
Okay.
Hill.
I just wanted to get a sense of that because I would want it to really close in on the school, right?
Agreed.
And then, of course, I can't let an opportunity to go by. As far as this, our Civic Center building, and you know that I and several others talked about affordable housing there, and several council members mentioned that Fairview would be the place for affordable housing. So I have a good memory for these things, and it's never too early to remind you of that. There's one Pepperidge Farm, that lower right corner A, that's Section 8 housing. We would not only perhaps not be adding any affordable housing, but could be losing affordable housing. And I think that anyway, and several people I know would like us to be an inclusive community. And it would be nice if the people that work in a lot of the businesses, say on Main Street or on Ogden or on 75th, could afford to also live in Downers Grove. So I know the RFP has the option in the Civic Center project for affordable housing. And I have a lot of faith that anyone will take you up on that. So I'm going to have a long memory on promoting that for the Fairview project and making sure that, especially if we remove some low-income housing, that we have affordable housing there. That we not only replace what we remove, but that we add. We need more inclusive housing in Governor's Grove. Thanks.
Sure.
So I kind of assume there, it looks like Fairview would become your main drag then through your new core, if it goes that way, as far as commercial or businesses? Wouldn't that be your main street, like Main Street is for us now?
Yeah, I suppose,
It
sure.
looks like, yeah, because it's a straight shot through there. But isn't that all the way down? Isn't that mostly one lane, one lane for each direction? There's no width if we wanted to expand that into more of a main drag either, is there? Fairview, if I remember.
It's 2 lanes.
Is it?
In both.
Is it?
There is parking on one side, but if there's no parking there.
So you'd want to allow for that in case you want a wider main street.
That's from
Where's
about
that?
Second to Maple.
Yeah.
It's from like Second to Maple. It's that way.
And next thing I would just right quick scribble a parking deck somewhere in there. Plan on it.
Street widths through this area are part of the Fairview Streetscape Plan, which will be part of the comprehensive 6 projects that are coming up probably early in next year.
Gonna need a few dividers for that plan.
Yeah.
It's getting late. Anybody else? Go ahead, Tom.
Tom Beckman, I opened Goldfinger. Obviously not an area that attracted me initially. The reason I chose the building where we are is because I used to walk with my wife, walk our dog down Rogers. We used to live downtown Downers. But it all started with a vision of this is what it looks like today, but what could it look like a year from now? And it wasn't just limited to where we built out. I mean, I've had visions for all the way to where Rogers and Maple cross, and I have a lot of things that I would like to do in that area. But what we did with our building, it was a really run-down, dilapidated building. We put quite a bit of money into it. And the building adjacent to us, we have interest in. That requires quite a bit of money into it. I have more of a philosophy that before we think about tearing things down, are there certain things that we could just kind of improve? You talk about the university vibe. I think one of the kind of characteristics of a university vibe is repurposing former industrial buildings, making them a lot more attractive. So I really like the idea of making this area artsy, artisanal craft like what we do, but I hope we don't, just bulldoze everything and think, okay, what exists there and what can we build around?
I'm going to add to that, just for when we came and we took over the manufacturing plant, which was our office, and actually it was all legal storage and all that. It was a environmental challenge, and we spent quite a bit remediating it from full manufacturing. And then Doggy Depot came in, and we had offices up and light manufacturing, and then extended down, and it is kind of that cool repurpose. Not that it's the sexiest thing, but it's there is a lot of neat things that can come out of reusing a building, and so I'll just echo that.
That's what I do for a living, so
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody on the council got anything else to add for tonight? Hey, thanks for you guys, the audience that stayed with us till 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a Christian.
And is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.